Thank you for coming, and the old adage proves true. You got to come early to get the best seats in the back. No one takes front seats. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming. That's the first thing. Whether you're presenting or you're here to listen to what's being presented. Tonight's panel is actually not only being recorded, but it is being live streamed, so you'll be seen by millions of people across the world, or not. Right? This is your chance. You could become a YouTube sensation, or not. I'm just throwing that out. This is your opportunity to keep that in mind. And it's for those especially, we've heard some good quality presentations over the last few meetings, and certainly part of this was to give people who couldn't attend in person the opportunity to join in and to listen to the presentations, at least the meetings where we could arrange live streaming and we had the connectivity. My name is Jim Din, and I'm the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association. Not everyone realizes that the NLTA came into existence in 1890 and is over 125 years old this year. In our long history as an organization, we have been advocates for improving the public education system in this province. In fact, it's recognized in our government legislation that we have a mandate to promote the cause of public education and to encourage discussion on the topic of education in the province. Our panel on the status of public education is established for this purpose. In my role as NLTA president, I'm also serve on the board of CAPTO, which is the Council of Atlantic Provinces Teacher Organizations, and the Canadian Teachers Federation. And we're also members then of Education International. And certainly there's been a lot of talk about a global education reform movement, about what education means. Is it something as narrow as your success in certain high stakes measurements, testing, CRTs, and national assessments and the like? Or is there something more to education, or is there some combination, some middle ground? In any discussion, we decided rather than react to reforms that may be imposed, we wanted to be proactive and positive in our approach, and to seek out those who are interested in education, who are committed to education, who care about it, who have a passion for it, to have a discussion on what education means. To look at the good, the things that we do well, to look at the challenges we face, maybe even the shortcomings, and how we go about addressing those shortcomings and those challenges so that we can continue to provide the best education possible to our children. The presentations up to this time have been has been as eclectic and as different and as the people who presented them and the organizations who represent them. But there's no doubt about it, each person who's come here to present certainly has an interest in education. In the end, we've all been through the education system. We may have children in the education system or grandchildren. We might be, we'll probably be served by people who've been through the education system, either now or later on we're in some long-term care facility. Whatever it is, we're going to benefit from the public education system. Hence, the panel. In this endeavor, the NLTA has joined the Faculty of Education at Memorial University and the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of School Councils. And I'm pleased to introduce my fellow panel members, even though I suspect they really don't need any introduction. To my immediate left is Denise Pike. She's the Executive Director of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of School Councils. Ms. Pike is well known in this province as an advocate of the public education system and as a leader within the school council community. Her list of accomplishments in support of teachers and public education is long and diversified. She's also been the recipient of the Patricia Cowan Award through the NLTA for her work in public education. I'd like to welcome Mr. Kirby. Oh, you're coming, sir. To my far left is Dr. Kirk Anderson. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Memorial University of Newfoundland. Dr. Anderson has had a long career in this province as an educator and school administrator, and has also been an education professor at the University of Saskatchewan, the University of Calgary, and the University of New Brunswick. And as Dean of the Faculty at Memorial, he oversees research and training in education. And to my right, the gentleman who's been keeping us on track, and me especially, over the last few weeks, the man who's probably been close to the need of a number of occasions, the healthcare system, because I've probably caused him a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress, Mr. Steve Brooks. He's the Assistant Executive Director of the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association. So again, thank you to those people who attended, who've chosen to present, and to those who've come to hear what the people have said. The panel is accepting submissions from the general public, teachers, special interest groups, whomever has an interest. Interested parties can make submissions through our public meetings or online through the NLPA website. And it's important to note that even if you've chosen not to present publicly, you can present online. If you're not comfortable with the public process, that's fine. If tonight you hear something that jogs your interest and say, you know what, I do have something to say, because I have heard that, well, people said I don't have anything to say. I believe you do. Present online. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be something in sort of like a huge monumental undertaking as a thesis, or you don't have to worry about whether I'm going to send back your submission with the red circled or anything like that. Present it in point form if you wish. The key thing is to have your thoughts in. At the end of this, the submissions will be presented to an independent researcher, through Dr. Bruce Shepard, and he will be writing a report based on the submissions. There can be you cannot write, of course, a report on the submissions that are not presented. That's the key thing. Nor can we say to them, well, here's what we think people would have said. So it's meant to be independent, arm's length, and so on and so forth. Each presenter has been given a time slot, and we'll ask you to respect that. We'll ask each presenter to limit their presentation to 10 minutes. You'll get these warnings. I want you to know that this came about because of the near-death experiences that Mr. Brooks had when we had smaller groups. So that's there for your own to keep you on track and to allow the panel to ask a question at the end of it, and to make sure that everyone has had an opportunity to present their issues. Again, if an issue is raised that you think is important, at the end of the process, at the end of the night, if you still have the stamina to be here, you're certainly welcome. We'll throw it open to the floor after everyone has finished if you want to have some commentary or ask questions at that point. So there will be that opportunity. Okay? So, starting with, we have tonight a total of 10 presenters. Am I reading it correctly? And the first 5 will be Scott Crocker of the Autism Society Executive Director, Catherine Conway Ward, President of the Music Special Interest Council, David Banfield, Executive Director, and Lynn Green, President of the Learning Disabilities Association, Kim Keating, Chair of the St. John's Board of Trade, and Joe Boland, Superintendent of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary. So we'll start with Mr. Crocker, Executive Director of the Autism Society. Thank you, sir.
This is a brief overview of the presentation from Autism Society Newfoundland and Labrador.
doesn't come out 3 times.
That's right. You get to do a do-over.
Solutions can be implemented immediately, we believe, to improve teaching and learning for all students and students and teachers rather, in our inclusive classrooms. They fall into these 5 categories: professional development, early intervention, occupational therapy, student assistant IRT and guidance allocations, and education is a right. Many demands but limited money mean we prioritize. Nothing is more important than our children. Nothing is more important to their growth and success than a loving, nurturing home and quality education. There is more unmet need in the public school system than ever. Smart use of resources only gets us so far. Here lies a huge problem with education in our province. Our delivery model is not based on need. Instead, it's based on budgets that are too low with unrealistic ceilings. Budgets that often become more important than those they're intended to serve. Working together with government, we must create a provincial strategy, an action plan with urgency, and dedicate resources to implementing real solutions that help improve student and family lives, that give an opportunity for learning, happiness, enjoyment, strong lasting relationships, meaningful employment, and careers. The inclusive classroom is a wonderful concept, not so much in practice. It's not working for many students. The standard criteria for diagnosing autism are found in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, 5th edition. People with autism enjoy the same longevity as people without autism. Early interventions and positive classroom experiences are critical to determining quality of life for those with ASD. The signs of autism typically begin before a child is 3 years old and affect information processing in the brain. Screening all children before 36 months through the public health system would ensure important steps occur before schooling begins. Social interaction, play therapy, sharing, understanding feelings of others, and so on. Comorbidities are common and a real concern. They exacerbate the challenges facing students with autism and their teachers. Studies have repeatedly found that 80% of those diagnosed with autism also have severe anxiety and/or depression. Anxiety is preventing many students with ASD from attending school regularly. So today, I speak as dad, educator, citizen, and an autism advocate. Autism presents significant challenges in the inclusive classroom, and it has to be recognized. Autism is the fastest growing developmental disorder in Canada, and it really does constitute a public health emergency. ASNL completed research in 2012 on the training needs of healthcare practitioners. The Canadian Autism Spectrum Disorders Alliance, CASDA, completed Canada's first ever national autism needs assessment in 2014, and ASNL just completed a provincial autism needs assessment in 2015. The level of mental health problems reported in these studies was significant. The identification of issues related to anxiety, depression, OCD, and ADHD provide dramatic insight into the need for more mental health support services and transition planning for children and youth with ASD in public schools. Concerns and needs relating to education remain priority needs for the autism community. And the priorities for helping ensure successful, inclusive classrooms are the following. First, professional development. Point 1, 2 compulsory training courses during pre-service training for all educators and guidance counselors in the K-12 system. And I would just note that this recommendation was accepted by government 8 years ago from the ISSP Pathways Commission report, and is still not implemented. Point 2, develop and implement a 2 or 3 year action plan for training of all educators, student assistants, and support staffs that are already working in the field about ASD and best practice teaching strategies. We did it for smart boards, team boards. We did it when raising awareness and knowledge around LGBTQ issues in schools. Surely to goodness we could do the same and better prepare teachers and others to work with those with ASD in the classroom. Early intervention. Let's screen all children for autism before 36 months. If needed, give rapid referral, assessment, and diagnosis. Intervention therapy should begin immediately. Research clearly shows the benefits and positive outcomes that flow from early intervention. Establish a minimum number of hours of ABA therapy to be provided. And if delayed because of a lengthy assessment or a late diagnosis, extend it beyond age 8 and or the grade 3 school year. Follow-up services in occupational therapy and speech language have unacceptably high wait lists, 18 plus months in Eastern region and longer elsewhere. They must be available within 3 months after diagnosis, since they're important components of early intervention. If wait lists are greater than 3 months, government should cover the cost when private practitioners are used. Occupational therapy. Newfoundland and Labrador is the only province in Canada that does not officially provide school-based occupational therapy services to children. OTs are cited as essential in the currently recognized models of service delivery for children with ASD. Occupational therapy is a health profession that focuses on maximizing the student's ability to participate in daily activities that include self-care routines, leisure activities, school or work-related tasks. OTs can offer enhanced understanding of the impact of sensory challenges in all daily activities and can recommend environmental accommodations that help in minimizing negative reactions to sensory inputs. Missed or delayed opportunities for early intervention in environments like schools put children at risk for developing lifelong issues that impact productivity, social, and leisure skills. Occupational therapy has been proven to help level the playing fields for school children, adapting educational programs to the varying needs and abilities of students. Providing OT in schools is a critical component in the realization of a successful inclusive schools model. OTs have been lobbying Newfoundland and Labrador's government since 1974 for school-based OT services. Student assistance and IRT and guidance. Add medically diagnosed anxiety to the criteria for allocation of student assistant and instructional resource teacher supports to students with ASD in an inclusive classroom. Change the allocation model that's currently used. If and when new needs appear in a classroom or a school, student assistant and or instructional resource time right now is rescheduled. Time is taken from other students who have it. Students who were already deemed to have needs warranting a certain amount of supports lose it because greater needs appear elsewhere. Well, that's a broken model. New allocations obviously should be additional when they're based on need. And finally, right to an education. Implement policies that eliminate forced homeschooling and the never-ending partial day schooling for special needs students. Enforce a maximum number of days that students can be removed from the school setting because of behavior and safety concerns. Mandate timely implementation of specific IEP plans for returns to school, And when children are at home, provide ABA therapy and respite care so parents don't have to give up work and end their careers. Provide regular schoolwork to children at home and Department of Education home tutoring services. IEP meetings, transition meetings between grades, between schools, and between post-secondary schools and or the workforce, and regulations around them need to be included in legislation in a new Schools Act and build in accountability. Alternate schooling has to become a reality in this province. It should be provided whenever a child or a youth is deemed too severe a safety risk to attend regular school. Government has a responsibility to provide education for all. And if not able to attend public school, what exactly is government's plan of care and support for those children and youth? Does Child, Youth and Family Services know when students of compulsory school age are out of school endlessly, without schoolwork, without tutoring, without evaluation? Perhaps responsibility for ensuring the child's constitutionally guaranteed right to an education needs to rest with a department other than education and childhood development, early childhood development. The Autism Society of Newfoundland and Labrador believes that these solutions will help improve the success that children and youth with autism achieve in the inclusive classroom. Preparation for success, we argue, begins long before the child enters kindergarten and an inclusive classroom. The 5 priority categories of need that were identified at the beginning and again just then are not cost prohibitive, and they'll bring positive results for many with ASD who experience significant daily challenges in public schools. And these things would be achievable certainly in the context of a provincial strategy. So in conclusion, priority solutions we believe that can be immediately implemented: 1, professional development of educators during pre-service and a formal 2 or 3 year strategy to offer PD to all those currently in the field. 2, early intervention resulting from screening, referral, assessment, diagnosis, and immediate follow-up therapy. 3, occupational therapy needs to be immediately given access to schools. Our students deserve the same research-proven advantages of OT services that students everywhere else in Canada have. 4, student assistant IRT allocation criteria must include medically diagnosed anxiety. Everyone you talk to, everyone today, is talking about anxiety levels in the schools. We were having a conversation at the beginning of the night. The current service allocation model has to change. And finally, government and district school management has to respect that education is a right of every student. Immediately develop and implement policies that make regular schooling a reality for many who are out of school or attending just partial days. And if it's not practical because of safety concerns, then please implement alternate schooling. Thank you.
Scott, just a question. Certainly in my role as president, I've heard from teachers a lot of frustrations with the inclusive education, how it's implemented, resourcing. But I've also talked to other groups where, you know, it seems to have run out when it comes to alternate schooling, because inclusion either means all in or nothing. So I'm a little bit surprised, I guess, when I hear, you know, the executive director of the Autism Society recommend an alternate schooling. I'm just curious as to how you see that working. If you can, how that would work. I would assume that you're not talking about warehousing students there, but you're looking at some, it would work in tandem with you.
Number 1, I'm not recommending alternate schooling.
Okay.
I'm recommending inclusion and everybody attending school and the proper resources and supports and services to facilitate. But I was in school in education for 37 years and a principal for more than 30. I know that from time to time there comes an example where it's not safe to have somebody in school. What I'm saying is that what's happening now, which is simply leaving at home, mom or dad quitting work and giving up careers and staying home, and nobody looking or wondering or even caring about education. So what I'm saying is if it's a case like that, then for heaven's sake, let's put the right to an education up here and let's do something so that these kids who someone says we cannot have in school at least are being looked after and given care and given education and given support. It's the tossing away that I take great exception.
Would you be concerned then that, here's the other question, would you be concerned then that the alternate school becomes that becomes the default position? In other words, you go to the lowest, the easiest thing to do. So I understand what you're saying. An alternate school setting will be preferable, infinitely preferable to having a child excluded from the system. But would you be concerned that this alternate school becomes?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't, because there's in all of my experience at least, there's examples of professionals that are involved in ISSP or IEP. Parents have become really strong advocates for their children. I don't fear that all of a sudden there will be a shift of everyone to alternate schools.
And
not at all, actually.
The alternate school could also be, and you can correct me, where a child where you're saying you know, is not working for them in the regular classroom. They're going to an alternate school with the intention that they receive as much supports as they can to eventually rotate back into the school system,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And I need to emphasize one point. The alternate school is not the purpose or the point of this presentation.
No.
The point of this presentation is that if inclusive classrooms are going to work for children and youth with ASD, then there has to be supports in place to guarantee that success. I'm only talking about an alternate school when it means there's nothing else being provided and the child or the youth is simply sitting at home.
Just a quick comment. I really like your thoughts about the occupational therapists, because we have heard that a lot on our travels, and you know, that they certainly do need to be in schools. So.
Oh, absolutely. They can still be housed with health and community services, but they need access to schools. And since 1974, they've been lobbying. And we're the only province in Canada that does not provide school access to occupational therapists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perfect. Our next speaker presenter is Catherine Conway Ward, and she's president of the Music Special Interest Council.
Really tall. Hi, good evening. So as Mr. Din said, my name is Kathy Conway Ward. I'm the president of the NLTA Music Special Interest Council, and I'm here to represent the music educators of our province. So I want to start out by saying I realize that many of our issues and concerns are quite specific to our specialty subject area. So thank you for this opportunity. Traditionally, schools in Newfoundland and Labrador have been celebrated nationally and internationally for the strength of its music programs. Musical ensembles have traveled all over the world to participate in festivals and competitions and have been quite successful in representing our province. All students in grades kindergarten to 6 participate in classroom music, choir, and/or instrumental ensembles, and students in grades 7 to 12 are afforded the opportunity to take music courses, participate in bands, choirs, and orchestras, and other musical groups. So there are many contributing factors to the successful delivery of musical instruction. A solid professional training ground at Memorial University's School of Music and Faculty of Education supports student teachers in cultivating their passion for music education. The Bachelor of Music Education program is an excellent, comprehensive program providing students with both theoretical and practical skills and knowledge as a starting point in their career as an educator. For example, the Mun Lab Band and Orchestra program is quite unique in that music education students gain valuable experience working with and teaching instrumental music to grade 5 students in St. John's Metro. As well, the music ed faculty have developed close relationships with teachers in the system, thus creating opportunities for observations and micro-teaching for pre-service teachers. So the second thing, the recently updated K-12 music curriculum, as prescribed by the government in Newfoundland and Labrador, is one of the best, if not the best, in Canada right now. Part of my role as president of the NL Music Council is to sit on the full board of the Canadian Music Educators Association, and I have had many conversations with my colleagues outside of Newfoundland and Labrador about the depth and breadth of our curriculum. So many, many other working committees in revising their own provincial music curriculum have based the content on Newfoundland and Labrador's music curriculum. For example, Nova Scotia has just recently revised their curriculum and have based an awful lot of it on ours. So it's a real feather in our cap. So again, music education and instruction in our province is highly regarded by our colleagues from other parts of the country. And our third strength is in our music teachers. Many of us play a significant role in our own schools, teaching every child in the building, leading school concerts and assemblies, preparing students for performance exams and auditions, and directing ensembles and productions within the school community. Further to that, many music teachers play a large part outside of school hours. Most of us are current performers and musicians and take on leadership roles within community groups and ensembles. In maintaining our own musicianship, we are role models for our music students and gain more knowledge, more personal knowledge to share with our classes and ensembles. I believe that this is a true testament to the passion of our music teachers, that music education is a real, lifelong pursuit and love. However, despite the well-structured training, the detailed and thorough curriculum documents, and the passion and commitment of our teachers, music education programs in our schools are facing some serious challenges. In 2013, the Music Special Interest Council conducted a survey of its members with 98 people responding to questions about workload, teaching space and materials, and other topics pertinent to Newfoundland and Labrador music education. So, on behalf of the music teachers of our province, the NLTA Music Council is making the following 4 recommendations to government regarding music programs in K-12. Number 1, review of music specialist allocation. Currently, many music teachers have one of 3 teaching assignments. Number 1, we're assigned to one school where their time is split between music courses and ensembles and other non-music courses, including language, math, social studies, and science. They're assigned to multiple schools where their time is split between 2 or more programs, with the majority of their assignment dedicated to teaching music courses or ensembles, also known as itinerant teachers, or they're hired in percentage positions. Many of these jobs are 50% time or less. While school populations affect the allocation of music specialists, the reduction of instructional time for music education has had an adverse effect on programming and the delivery of curriculum. Additionally, the quality of performance and instruction is impacted due to additional responsibilities and roles of the music specialist. For example, teaching non-music courses, reduced instructional time in ensemble settings, and moving music courses and ensemble rehearsals to lunchtime or after-school hours. As well, many advertise permanent music positions or percentage positions, and this is just not enough time to structure a thriving and healthy music program. When less time is dedicated to music education, so many students and teachers lose out. Our music is such an important part of our culture and heritage in Newfoundland and Labrador, and in order to maintain this strength, more instructional time for music education is needed. So our first recommendation to government is, the Music Special Interest Council requests that government reconsider music specialist assignments so as to ensure strong and meaningful musical teaching and learning for our students. My second point is the assessment of space available for musical instruction. In many schools, there is limited space provided for the delivery of some music education programs. In our 2013 survey, 57% of music teachers stated that they teach music in rooms other than the music room. Many music classes are held in students' homerooms, cafeterias, libraries, and other shared spaces rather than a dedicated music room. As well, some teachers, music teachers, teach from a trolley or a cart, moving from classroom to classroom. Almost 50% of music teachers have to travel to teach music. This is of great concern to music specialists. If there is limited non-specialist space, this affects the delivery of the music curriculum. To effectively provide a good musical education, teachers need space for materials, for example, instruments, music stands, books, and for activities used to reinforce curriculum outcomes, movement, performance, composition, that sort of thing. Valuable instructional time is lost due to teacher travel from class to class, from school to school, and to the movement, setup of equipment, etc. So our second recommendation, the NLTA Music Special Interest Council requests that government assess the current teaching plan and resources provided to music specialists to ensure a successful delivery of the mandated curriculum. Okay, number 3, review of class cap size. Presently, there is no cap size for music classes at any grade level. Classes are often doubled up for music instruction. This will impact effective assessment and performance practices due to the sheer number of students in each class, sometimes over 100 students and one teacher. As well, an increased student-teacher ratio can pose safety issues. All of these factors compromise the integrity of well-established and successful programs and will be detrimental to student learning and musical growth. So our third recommendation, the Music Special Interest Council requests that government review cap sizes for music courses and ensembles so that the integrity and strength of school music programs be maintained. And finally, our fourth recommendation, the creation of a music consultant position at district level. Excuse me. An intricate and extensive curriculum, excellent educational training, and enthusiasm and love of music are significant qualities and skills to have as a music educator. In order to maximize music instructional time, to create a strong professional learning community, and to support music educators throughout the province, we feel that establishing a music consultant at district level would be extremely beneficial. As many music teachers are often the only music specialist in the school, having the opportunity to connect with a specialized consultant would be of great support and value. A consultant would provide guidance and ideas for teaching and learning using the curriculum and various resources, and to create a collegial network for music teachers. So our final recommendation, the Music Special Interest Council requests that government create a music consultant position at district level in order to guide and support music teachers. So on behalf, my closing remarks, on behalf of the Music Council, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share our celebrations and challenges and for providing a forum where we are able to express these issues. Thank you.
Just one question. Thanks for that. So where do you go to get advice on music programming or curriculum?
I'm sorry?
Where do you go now to get advice on music programming or curriculum support?
We kind of network on our own. I might email a friend or a colleague and say, do you have a song for Thanksgiving in grade 6, you know, that sort of thing. So we don't, it's just, you know, you kind of reach out to your colleagues on your own sort of thing. And of course, our Special Interest Council, we do our best to bring that together as well.
Thanks.
There is a consultant at the department level still, is there?
Yes.
Okay.
And is there any such creature or version of a creature as a music consultant at the district level, or one that even partially
currently we have a fine arts consultant. She's responsible for all of Newfoundland and Labrador, and that includes, I think, music, visual arts, theater arts, and just one other. So she's responsible for those specialty areas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Our third presenter is David Banfield and Lynn Green. David is the Executive Director of the Learning Disabilities Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, and Lynn is the President. Is Lynn here with you?
I'm just here.
Oh, you're just here for moral support.
Moral support. And answer any questions.
Okay.
Lynn have a day at Christiana.
wanted to check if we're okay.
It's easier and more important for everyone.
First of all, I'd like to thank the panel for inviting us to present tonight. The Learning Disability Association, obviously we've got a commitment to our clients and our community to present their concerns and to such a panel. I know at times it seems like we have an adversarial relationship, but we really appreciate more of the collaborative nature of these types of things, so we can let you know what our parents, our individuals with learning disabilities, and those who support them, some of their suggestions for how we can improve the educational system. I'd like to start out just by having a quick look at this. This is part of a recent Supreme Court decision, the Jeffrey Moore decision in 2012, and I haven't been able to find a better quote, better portion of text to better describe the issues that we have and how we feel about those issues. I'll read it out loud. It just states, adequate special education, therefore, is not a dispensable luxury. For those with severe learning disabilities, it is the ramp that provides access to the statutory commitment to education made to all children. So I'd like you to think about that as we go through a couple of our recommendations. We only have 2. But this really sums up what we're trying to say. I think for too long, and I'm sure others in the room might agree, special education is seen as a luxury. It's seen as something that we'd like to provide, and we provide it when we can, when there's funding, when there's availability of assistive technology, for example. But that's certainly not the ideal case, and according to the Supreme Court in a unanimous decision, that is not the opinion of the court. So, keeping this in mind, we're just going to go through 2 of our main concerns, with the idea that special education or support for students with learning disabilities and other exceptionalities isn't a luxury. It is an essential part of education. It is an essential part of our public education, and is an essential part of our inclusive education environment. Our first recommendation, and it was touched on earlier, is education and training of teachers and support staff within our public schools. Time and time again, we hear from our parents. Time and time again, we've heard from our parents of wonderful experiences in the classrooms. So we're not here to say that every single experience is negative in our school system. We have here a lot of great things that are happening in our schools. That being said, it is our mandate to let people know some of the concerns of our members. And one of those is oftentimes the education and training of teachers is not what it needs to be, especially at the younger grades. And those would be the primary elementary grades. The ISSB Pathways Report made 2 recommendations, recommendation 57, 58, which many of you are familiar with. And that mandated that at least there would be a minimum of 2 courses in exceptionalities that every graduate receive if they were going to graduate from Memorial University's Faculty of Education teacher training programs. In addition, it was recommended that the Department of Education only certify teachers with those 2 courses. And that was a minimum. That wasn't a maximum. That was a minimum requirements. Currently, that is not the case. Doctor might be able to speak a bit more about this, Dr. Anderson, but the last time we looked into it, those who graduate from the primary elementary program are required only to take 1 course in exceptionalities. They may take the 2nd course in exceptionalities as an elective, but it's not always offered and not always available. So right away we have, in our view, the most important teachers, those teachers in the K-6 levels, who are the first line most times for the identification, for the beginning of the assessment process, and for the beginning of the remediation process for learning disabilities, who do not have the minimum requirement that was laid out in the ISSB Pathways Report. Other teaching groups may have it, and the Faculty of Education, at Memorial, is bringing in new programs. We are still trying to find out if they'll include those minimum requirements. But for us, that's got to be the first step. And we're only talking about the minimum requirements. I think most of us would agree that those requirements should go beyond the minimum, but I think it would be a great start if we could implement, which was done in 2008 with the ICC Pathways Report. So that's our first recommendation. So obviously, just to recap, that is our recommendation to the panel, that recommendations 57 and 58 be immediately implemented by both Memorial University and the Department of Education. Second major concern for our clients, again, this is not to characterize every single parent we work with, but the unfortunate reality is that it's experience of many. We'd like to see greater consistency between educational policies emanating from the department level to educational practice at the school and classroom level. By far the biggest frustration for our parents when I speak to them in our office is that when I sit down and tell them about all the policies the Department of Education has in place to help their child be successful at school, and they're comparing that to the reality of the classroom. Oftentimes the frustration lies that they don't meet. And so therefore the reality in the classroom does not reflect the policies that emanate from the department level. Just this last month, I've spoken to a parent on the Northern Peninsula who was denied access to her own child's guidance files and records and assessment scores by the school, and she was told that they're confidential and she wasn't allowed to see them as a parent. I've had parents speak to me about incomplete IEP, individual education plans, and accommodation forms. I spoke to a parent this morning whose child went from grade 9 to grade 10 this year. She has yet to have a transition meeting, and she's yet to have an IEP meeting, and it's November next week. We have other schools where accommodations are either not carried out or they're carried out incomplete, given at times when they can be, but not at other times. We have assistive technology, which can be a valuable resource for students with learning disability, given to students with no training. So oftentimes it's improperly used or not used at all. We have non-collaborative environments. We have lots of parents who are frustrated, they can't get a hold of their teachers, they're not getting any response from teachers and guidance counselors, and this is happening every day, every week that we hear from schools. Again, I don't want to sound like this is the only feedback we're getting from parents. Obviously, like I said earlier, we have some positive experience for a lot of our parents, but we also have a lot of parents who are facing huge frustrations with the schools because, once again, if we go back to the original quote about special education not being a luxury, they feel like it is a luxury. They feel like those who get the services have won the lottery, so to speak, because they have a good teacher. We think all teachers are great, however, they need to be given the resources and the ability to carry out things that our students with learning disabilities and other students with exceptionalities need. So our recommendation is that the Department of Education conduct a review of the consistency and quality of the required educational services provided not only to students with learning disabilities, but all students with exceptionalities. I think we really need to know, I think the department needs to know, I think NLTA and other major stakeholders need to know that while they've created sound, in our belief, great policies at the department level, they really need to know that at the school level, at the individual student level, there are a lot of cases where these aren't being implemented and it's causing major frustration. And with that, we've talked about the possibility of a two-tiered education system being developed. I'm afraid to say it's not being developed, it exists today. We have a two-tiered education system, especially for students with learning disabilities and other exceptionalities. Parents who can't afford it are getting private assessments. Parents who can't afford it are spending thousands of dollars for tutoring outside of school hours. We don't have the same experience with it, but I hear they're spending thousands of dollars on occupational therapy private. For me, for somebody living in Newfoundland, to me that is not a public education system. We have developed a two-tier education system, and I think if we want to go forward and call our system a true, beneficial public education system, that cannot be the case. And I'll end it there.
David, just a quick question. You talked about the need to review the greater need for greater consistency and the need to review. The government needs to review that issue. What would you say are the challenges, I guess, with regards to the consistency? What stands in the way of that, of implementing policy?
I think if I were honest, I would think that there's a lack of accountability at the school level. Again, I'm not trying to paint this as a picture that happens all the time, but we've actually heard from teachers saying, I don't believe in learning disabilities, I don't believe in accommodations, and they're just simply not given. There seems to be no tangible responsibility for statements like that or situations like that. Obviously that's an extreme case, But there are lots of cases like that. I think wait times for assessments is a perfect example. Obviously, I don't have any specific numbers because those numbers don't exist. But from anecdotal evidence from our parents, we're looking at year and a half, 2 years, at a crucial time, grade 3, when we're looking at this is a crucial time for students with learning disabilities. Some of those aren't getting assessed till grades 5, and perhaps in severe cases, those accommodations that they may need aren't being put into place till grade 6. So there we have 7 years of public education without a proper assessment completed and without accommodations put in place. Again, that's a severe case, but even at the kind of the other end of the spectrum, we're still seeing people having to wait a year at least for a lot of assessments. The consistency for us is that, like I said, we do have parents having positive experiences, getting assessments exactly when they need them and accommodations put into place. But it doesn't seem to be there doesn't seem to be any consistency, and it really comes down to, we hear time and time again, oh, my child had a great teacher in grade 6. It was a wonderful experience. We got to grade 7, and it's been the worst experience so far. And the frustration within that, because things that were there in place beforehand are suddenly not there.
Do you think there's a big difference between, because I'll back up a little bit and just be fast, Steve will give me a nudge. But I have 3 kids, and my younger 2, both severely dyslexic. And I can tell you wonderful positive experiences. But do you think there's a discrepancy in the amount of understanding and supports from the primary, elementary level to the higher grades? Because I got to tell you, what you just talked about today, with parent going outside the system, with the parent not being able to get information on their child, those exact calls came to me this afternoon from a parent. And I don't want to sound like I'm putting it all on junior high, senior high, because I'm not. But do you think there's a discrepancy there between primary and elementary? And do you, because I personally feel that maybe it's to do with the overwhelming workload and not having enough resources right there in the school. How do you feel about that?
I think there's a discrepancy from school to school to begin with, regardless of age group. We do see our kind of biggest stage, or biggest issue is that transition from grade 6 to grade 7. Oftentimes in grade 6 you have your classroom teacher, perhaps for the vast majority of time, and then certain specialist teachers come in and go. But that one teacher has a much stronger understanding of the individual students. They may have 30 students, or whatever the cap is today, in their classroom. Once the move goes to junior high, you have 6 or 7 different teachers who could have wildly different views on the matter, wildly different teaching styles. And I think that's where the issues start, because there's a lack of consistency, a lack of accountability in our opinion. We get, even within the same grade, we get different experiences. But I think that plays a part in as well. You're going from predominantly one teacher who has a good understanding of his or her class, to having 6 or 7 different teachers who may have 130, 140 students that they're responsible for. But again, for us, I mean, that is an honest concern, but the bigger concern is just the lack of consistency from school to school, from class to class. And it's causing major frustrations for our parents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Our next speaker is Kim Keating, and Kim is the chair of the St. John's Board of Trade. Okay. Oh, perfect.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Keating, and I'm actually joined here this evening with Rhonda Tolkien, who is our policy and advocacy specialist with the St. John's Board of Trade. So I am the 2015 chair. I'm an engineer, and currently in my day role, I am vice president of fabrication with the Cal Group of Companies. And most importantly, a mom of 3 daughters, currently enrolled in Beachy Cove Elementary in St. Philip's. I have a grade 3 to grade 4, and a 13-year-old in junior high, grade 8 at Larrysbrook. So I wear many hats, and I'm very invigorated to be part of this discussion. Unfortunately, I've been told I have to part the mom hat. And our CEO has reminded me of why I'm here tonight. So as you can appreciate, I have a great personal interest in this discussion and the current state of the province's education system, and there's so many opportunities for our future state. But of course, tonight I'm presenting on behalf of the St. John's Board of Trade and our 900 members. What our children are learning and how their needs are being met is important to everyone. So I'd first like to commend the NLTA, Faculty of Education, and the Federation of School Councils for taking on this initiative. It's really wonderful to bring this group together, and for taking on this initiative and traveling across the province to gain perspectives from all those with a vested interest in the province's education system. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to present the St. John's Board of Trade's views on the status of the province's education system, and really more specifically why this is an issue that will have a major impact on our business community. The St. John's Board of Trade, our mandate in life is, we're committed to helping business succeed. A strong private sector is critical to this province's future. However, our success will depend in large part to our ability to produce a talented population with the skills businesses will require to compete locally and on the global world stage. I'm going to share 3 important topics with you that influence the ability for youth to transition smoothly from education to employment, ensuring that we are preparing our youth for success. Success looks different for each one of us. Our report is based on findings from the largest, most influential business association in Canada, with a network of over 450 chambers and boards of trade, representing 200,000 business of all sizes, which is the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Number 1, the importance of providing user-friendly and accessible labor market information. Right now, students, parents, educators, and employers are making critical decisions about their career paths without the best information to inform them in all cases. This has to change. Information contained in the provincial government's Labour Market Outlook 2025 indicates that there will be 64,000 job openings between 2015 and 2025 in Newfoundland and Labrador. With an aging population and more people set to retire than enter the workforce, finding workers will be a challenge for business. That is why we have to pay special attention now to tomorrow's labour force participants, so that we have enough graduates in high-demand fields with the skills most sought after. We know there is a skills gap right across the country, including here in this province. In order to close that gap, we need to better align our education training systems to our labour market needs. For youth, it is essential the education and training they get is relevant to the job market that they will eventually enter. First, they need to know where the jobs will be. They also need to know what those jobs will be so they can plan their education and training accordingly. And they need education that is not just job training, but equips them to be adaptable. We recognize that employers do not always provide clear and strong signals to youth. That needs to change as well. The thorough, relevant, and accessible labour market information is important to career decision-making among middle school, secondary, and post-secondary students, and the parents, school, counselors, teachers, and professors who guide them. How this information is communicated is equally important as students make decisions that will ultimately position them for life after education. Number 2, the need for available, reliable, consistent career decision-making resources. According to research done by the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, career decision-making among secondary and post-secondary students is insufficiently informed by labour market information, including labour market projections. Career education lacks consistency nationwide in terms of approach and funding. Students are constrained in their career decision-making by cultural stigmas associated with skilled trades and vocational education. We think private sector engagement with education providers would enlighten students and educators as they consider career options. Number 3, offer more experiential learning opportunities. Work-integrated learning needs to be incorporated into the provincial curriculum and include co-op and internship programs and other workplace training programs. This will benefit our students by allowing them to gain experience before entering the workforce and contributing along their career paths. Employers, too, need to play a role, as not enough of them, particularly smaller firms and organizations, are taking advantage of this type of learning. Business education partnerships play a critical role not only in career education, but ensuring the students develop the skills and competencies necessary to succeed in their chosen career paths. The World Economic Forum argues that apprenticeships and workplace training are key to addressing high youth unemployment rates, which are in part due to young graduates' lack of work experience as they enter the labor market. Whether or not they lead directly to full-time employment, paid internships and other forms of workplace training can provide youth with the experience and skills they can leverage to find other opportunities. A study conducted by Waterloo University researchers analyzed over 11,000 students using data from Statistics Canada's Youth in Transition Survey, which tracked both co-op and non-co-op students from high school to their entrance into the labor market. After investigating family backgrounds and academic achievement at secondary and post-secondary levels, co-op students were found to be at an advantage during school-to-work transition. Researchers found that graduates of co-op programs are making 15% more per year than non-co-op programs. With relevant labor market information, available consistent career guidance, and increased experiential learning, our students will increase their chances of successfully transitioning from the classroom to employment. This will only be achieved if governments, teachers, and businesses communicate regularly with a deliberate plan and process in place. We look forward to reading the report that you will be presenting to government, and we appreciate the opportunity to present the views of the business community. Thank you very much.
That's good. I get to answer the questions now.
Okay.
Just a few. With regards, a number of things actually raised there that has been interesting. When you look at, I guess you're targeting, when you're talking about the education system and lining up with the labor market, do you focus more on the, I guess, secondary high school, or do you see this as something, information, or bring this into the lower grades as well before they get to the high school?
We're thinking both. I mean, a lot of the research has been focused on the post-secondary, but we do see opportunities where, you know, coming in at earlier ages really help shape and, you know, while they're, you know, we're still learning about our children and what their strengths and whatnot are. We do see opportunities in the younger grades as well.
And the skills gap, just to make sure I'm understanding it, are you talking about just the work habits or the skills they need to? We hear that an awful lot in the teaching profession too, and but I'm just curious if you'd elaborate on what when you're talking about skills gap, what are you talking about?
So we're talking about both in terms of the what I would call the technical skills, but what we're hearing a lot of from our employers and what the research is also showing is around the soft skills and the ability to, you know, whether it's communicate, present, you know, we're seeing, and you know, I'm just going to speak to my own personal experience, you know, we're getting the bench strength in terms of when the children come into the workplace, or I shouldn't say the children, the young adults, but it's the ability, the communication skills, you know, relationship building, those types of softer skills are, I would say, are often, I guess their importance and criticality of those skills are often, the priorities aren't really placed on those.
And can we, in a presentation we heard down on the Canadian Peninsula in Harbour Breton, the Community Youth Network, actually, one of the things that they offered was about career, about doing interviews. And while you can't measure that, I guess, in any sort of a test or anything, but they found that for a lot of the children there that went on, their ability and confidence in doing interviews improved remarkably. That was a partnership too between the school and the community group.
And you know, I think the key point of, I guess, what we're sharing here tonight is actually that partnership element in terms of, you know, employers, you know, the education system, government, because I know from my own personal experience, when we talk about co-op and experiential learning, you know, and what we're doing now for my company is actually I'm taking these co-op students and I'm spending time with them in terms of how to do a presentation, how to conduct yourself in an interview. So focusing some effort, you know, we're giving them lots of great work experience, but how to help them in terms of develop their softer skills, communication, negotiation, all those types of things that really need to survive in the ever-changing world that we're currently living in.
We're going to look now one more. Have you noticed then over the time, like when it comes to co-op students, a decline in the number available in the programs, or have you?
I think it varies, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm seeing more companies that are becoming more interested, but oftentimes, you know, as I've said here, sometimes it's a little tougher for the smaller businesses to take on some of these students. It really depends on the market. Like I would say, you know, just recently with the softening here, we've probably seen fewer numbers. But when you talk to the university, where you know they go through kind of ebbs and flows in terms of when they're when there's difficulty in finding placements. Hence, why we're trying to encourage others and find incentives and other ways in which we can, you know, get employers to embrace this and really the outcomes. I mean, the proof is in the pudding in terms of the benefits that this provides to these young adults that are starting their careers.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great, thank you.
This I'd like to welcome Joe Boland, Superintendent of the Royal Newfoundland and Labrador, to make his presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the panel for inviting us here. I think we'll be a little bit different from the other presenters here tonight, but what I'd like to do is to give the audience a little overview of what it is that we do in schools through our community services section. And we're heavily involved in our schools, but I think what you'll see at the end, and I'll make some recommendations of how I think we can be perhaps doing this better through a more collaborative approach. So one of the programs that we do, which we invest significantly into, is the DEAR program. And that program stands for the Drug Abuse Assistance Education Program. It's a 10-hour program that's delivered to grade 6 students. It's delivered to 2,500 students in the jurisdictions where the RNC polices. Basically, when we talk about drugs at this age, we're talking about tobacco and alcohol. One of the big issues that one of our officers was speaking to me today about was the whole idea of stress, anxiety, and depression at this age, which I found to be, I suppose I shouldn't say I was amazed at that, because I do have two kids that just recently went through school, and I understand that there's a lot more pressures, I think, today than when we got there. There's a lot more expectations and stuff. But anyway, they're really seeing that. Other things like, you know, that we're teaching them resistance strategies when it comes to try to, you know, stay out of drug culture or alcohol or smoking. Social interaction and coping skills, risk and consequences for their actions, communication skills and confidence building when they're speaking to their peers and you know, trying to get out of their situations and how to be confident in that approach. Networking of support, so dealing with family, friends, teachers, police officers, bullying. This is a program that, besides the stuff that we teach here, it gives police officers an opportunity to connect with kids in our schools. And it's really the foundation. Like I said, we spent a significant amount of time in the schools with this program. And it's really a program that should be designed that we could build on. But as you'll see as I go into the next part of the presentation, it doesn't kind of work like that. Like I said, we have 3 full-time officers that spend basically from September to May in the schools teaching the DEAR program. The next program that we teach is at the grade 7, first year of junior high, and that's the Computer Safety Information Program. It's a 1-hour presentation that's given to every student in grade 7, again in our jurisdiction. We also offer a parent session with this program that's separate to the 1 hour. It's 1 hour for the parents. And this program is really not well received. And we're not sure if it's because the parents just don't have the time, they're too busy. It's normally 7 o'clock presentation, but we don't get the successful that we would hope to get. And in this program, we talk about, we get into the internet safety stuff. We talk about chat groups, and really, for parents, you've got to get involved in what your kids are doing online and what they're doing with their phones. And we're seeing this at grade 7. We're seeing kids that are talking to strangers online. They're sending pictures. They're sending nude pictures. They're sexting is what they call it. They're receiving pictures as well, and photographs from their friends, and they're right into this photo. If you're following your kids on Instagram and other things that they're using today, there's a big usage of sending photos of everything that they're doing. We talk about harassment online and uttering threats online. We get into things that, how these behaviors or these things that they're at with computers and phones can ruin the reputation, they can ruin the job, job opportunities down the road. So you look at police service, for instance, one of the first things that we do when candidates apply for our service, we go in and we look at Facebook, we look at what they're doing on Twitter, we look at what they're doing on Instagram, YouTube. So that's the grade 7 program. And again, so you'll see that was a 1-hour presentation that's given. We offer a 1-hour presentation on STRIVE, and STRIVE stands for Students Taking Responsibility in Violence Education. Basically what this is, we facilitate this program, and it's basically the students take ownership of it. We talk about things like the violence and how violence impacts others. We talk about the cause of violence in our schools. And now we're getting away from what we always call bullying. We're getting more into violence is a crime. And when you hurt somebody, when you hit somebody, there's consequences to that are criminal. And the last program that we offer is a 1-hour presentation. This is a drug education officer, and we have one person that's dedicated to this in the Northeast Avalon. And this person goes to junior high and high school, but it's done on request from the school. And we'll talk about, now you're getting into, I'm sure this is no secret to people, but just fair amount of drugs, being taken and sold and whatnot in our junior high and high schools. And so they come in, they show the drugs that are out on the street, and they make students aware of it. They talk about some of the effects of it. They talk about the legal ramifications of purchasing, selling, or growing. They talk about peer pressure and community support groups that are out there for students that are addicted to drugs. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about, and perhaps open up some questions on, is the whole, where do we go from here? When I talk to the officers that are delivering these programs in our schools, they want to be doing more. And as you can see, we invest significantly in grade 6, but when you get to grade 7, 8, 9, and high school, that commitment from our part may seem like it's a lot less, but in actual fact, we commit 4 officers to these programs full-time, and we commit 3 part-time to delivering these programs. We're not teachers. We're not healthcare providers. We consider ourselves to play a significant role in trying to keep the classroom safe and healthy for learning, for teachers as well as students. And we'd like to see more collaboration between healthcare providers, the Department of Education, parents, and students, so that we can deliver a consistent program right from elementary school right to high school. And we're not muddying the waters here in our message. So in other words, when a student comes up and talks about depression, we talk about anxiety. That's not for a police officer, and I don't think it's for a teacher. I think that's where a medical association or healthcare providers need to get involved in this program. The program that we deliver in Deer is a program that was developed by the United States, but I think there's a better program that could be developed here in Newfoundland. But again, I think we need to bring all the stakeholders together to develop that program so that we're sending a very consistent message that it's grassroots is here. We have students involved, we have teachers involved, we have parents involved, we have the medical association involved, and the police service involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Boland. It's interesting, you talk about the DARE program and you raise the issue of stress, anxiety, mental health issues at the grade 6 level, and you're noticing that, your officers are noticing that?
Tanya Schwartz, who, she's a very competent officer that we have that delivers that program, and she's floored by what she's seeing at the elementary school level. And she's even told me that she's had teachers come and talk to her about grade 3 students.
Yeah. I was speaking to the president of our School Councillors Association today in relation to, I think it was a CBC story on setting up a drug addictions court as opposed, and the lawyer at the time, I think it was Jonathan McDonald, he had drawn a connection between drug use and the crime. I think that they're seeing the same people. We found, at least the councillors have found that there's a connection between drug use and an underlying pre-existing mental health condition, sometimes trauma at the early grade. That doesn't at the early years. It doesn't explain everything, but for the most part, they've noticed that there's a strong connection. It's interesting that your officers have sort of seen maybe not set out that way, but you've sort of drawn that. You've noticed that with the drug addiction DARE program that there seems to be that connection there as well.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, I met with the municipalities from Torbay, Coachco, Flat Rock, and we got into a conversation about drug use in the community. And they told me stories about playgrounds that have syringe needles, that parents that are taking their kids there now are falling there. They're talking about workers that are going to be taking garbage in the cans and afraid now because there's needles in the garbage. And I'm thinking these are small communities here in the northeast Alabama that when I joined policing 30 years ago, that these are only places you talk about like Vancouver, Toronto, New York City. And we can put our heads in the sand, or we can collectively come together and come up with a strategy. The police has a very big part in this. We're not hiding behind that. But keeping our community safe, keeping our children safe, keeping our teachers safe is everybody's responsibility. And I think that's the collaborative approach that I would like to see. Bring all of us together, put our heads together so that we can develop programs that are fit for here, for now, not for 10 years down the road, or not what was going on in the past, but what we're seeing in classrooms today. And then come up with an approach that's consistent so that the message is not a police officer going one day talking about stress and then the healthcare provider coming the next day and sending a completely different message and only confusing the issue. We don't need to get out from what our role is. I think we should have a clear understanding of what our role is. I think teachers should as well. I think if you were to talk to most teachers in the system, and I've talked to several, that they'll tell you they're not healthcare providers either. They're there to teach children. And and I think that if we bring us all together, I think we're all doing a lot of work. That's what I'm trying to say. But I just think that we need to be more collaborative in our approach.
The program that you spoke about, that it could be a better program developed in the province, is there a template for that? Did the RNC have a template?
No, I guess what we're saying is that we're open to that conversation. Okay. That we would gladly come to the table and sit down with professionals in that so that we understand what our role is and how we develop it. I don't think we should own these programs that we're in. When we talk about stress, like really, are we the best people to be talking to children in grade 6 about stress? Or are there better people that should be talking about that? And I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, quick question. Do you see a role for the fact of education in that? Every teacher passes through their door at some point.
Sorry?
Do you see a role for the fact of education in the programs you're talking about?
Well, absolutely. Well, I think first of all, the teachers are the people that see the students every day. Yeah. Right? So they know, who knows better than what's going on with, teachers know, I think, perhaps better than some parents know of how their students are feeling. You take it like we talked about mental health. What better person to have a connection with mental health than a teacher? Not that they will provide training, but to be able to assist healthcare. And so, that's what, when I sit down and look at it for 30 years, and when I listen to my officers that are in the schools, that's what they're telling me, and I agree with it 100%.
More collaboration.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, and that's the first slide. We did have Val Barter and Julie Rose from the Planned Parenthood. They were unable to make it, but they did send a brief in to us. At this point, our next presenter is Mary Shortle, and Mary is the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour. And funny you don't.
Doesn't like me, do I? evening, everyone. Unfortunately, Mary Shaw couldn't be here this evening due to a death in the family, so I'm going to be presenting our brief tonight. I'm the General Vice President of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour. So tonight, I just basically want to do these in 3 levels. I'm going to give you a little brief outline of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour, basically who we are and what we do. Then I'm going to talk about the role of education in building an inclusive society. And underneath that, I'm going to talk about early childhood development and education, kindergarten, grade 12 system, and post-secondary education. And then we have a few recommendations we'd like. So, just so you know, the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour has been representing the interests of working families in Newfoundland and Labrador since 1936. Currently, we represent 65,000 working men and women from every sector in our economy and from every community in the province. The Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour is dedicated to advancing the cause of working people and promoting a progressive civil society where no one gets left behind. One of the key pillars of an equal and equitable society is public education. Public education plays a major role in reducing poverty, improving physical and mental health, reducing inequality of all forms, and increasing participation in a democratic process. So advancing the cause of working people is what we strive to do, and that is really where accessible public services come into play, not only in education but healthcare, worker training, elder and home care, and that sort of thing. We had a quote in our brief, which I'm going to give to you after. Basically, it was from the General Director of UNESCO, and basically it says that the benefits of education permeates all walks of life, from the movement of birth from the moment of birth. So essentially, everyone benefits from an education. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we essentially have 3 components to our education system: a childcare system, which is mostly privately delivered; a kindergarten to grade 12 system that is drastically under-resourced financially and from a human resources perspective; and a post-secondary system that still burdens most students with significant debt upon completion. In addition, the fact that these 3 components are not aligned or well connected under one umbrella structure inhibits the ability for long-term planning and vision. Properly resourcing public education at all levels should not be viewed as a cost, but as an investment, and one that will pay dividends well into the future. So we need to ensure that young people and children are given every opportunity to get the best education possible. The benefits of a well-designed and appropriately funded early childhood education and child care program are many and well known. Women's equality and employment, poverty reduction, family-work balance, social integration, and equal opportunity, to name a few. A discussion paper for Canada's 4th National Child Care Policy Conference, entitled Child Care 2020, released in 2014, summed this up quite well. It said, "The benefits of a well-designed and appropriately funded early childhood education and child care program are many and well known to experts. They include women's equality and employment, poverty reduction, family-work balance, social integration, and equal opportunity, improved child development and well-being, and economic prosperity." Early childhood education is important in shaping young children and preparing them for the future, and we need to invest now. Over the past decade, we have seen a K-12 system that has suffered significant setbacks. We have seen reduction in number of teachers, administration hours, special education supports, specialized education services, available curriculum, and other related areas. Although we have had new schools and other infrastructure put in place over the same period, without the necessary human resources in place to staff and operate these facilities, we are not providing the optimal, well-rounded education of our young people. The K-12 system needs to be resourced entirely based on need. If we are to give our young youth the best education possible, prepare them for post-secondary and beyond, the current approach to resourcing public education at the K-12 level has to go. Over the next decade, over 90% of net job growth in Newfoundland and Labrador will be in areas requiring some form of post-secondary education. High school graduates who don't pursue post-secondary education cite financial resources as the main factor. We have in place a solid foundation that supports more equitable access to post-secondary education, and we need to continually progressively reduce all tuition fees. Currently, the government has now raised tuition fees for graduates from foreign countries, and we need to reverse that if at all possible. So the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour recommends 3 things. First, the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour recommends that all aspects of the education system be adequately resourced based on need. This includes areas such as teacher allocation, administrative resources, curriculum, teaching assistants, and specialized services such as mental health supports and guidance counseling. This also includes an affordable and accessible public childcare system and continued investments in post-secondary that progressively reduces tuition costs. Secondly, the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour recommends that all aspects of the education system be placed under one umbrella structure. This also includes the development of a publicly funded, administered, and affordable early childhood education and childcare program. And finally, Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour recommends that the development of education policy be linked with other key public policy frameworks, such as, but not limited to, poverty reduction, workforce development, youth retention, and attraction. I'd like to thank the panel for allowing us to give our submission.
I have to say that every time I listen to a speaker, not so much that I want to have questions, I want to make a speech in support. So I remain strained to listen because it's important that I do just that. And I'm hearing some really important things. I would advocate free tuition.
So would I, as an educator.
Just wondering, with your development of education policy, be linked to other policies. I can say it's the first time. Yeah, Nicole, speak up. Okay. Just with regards to, not by you all alone, Steve, but apparently Leslie Ann. Just with regards to the development of education policies that should be linked to the development of other policies. I wonder if you care to elaborate on that as to how you, or how the Federation of Labour sees that working, if you can. I know I'm putting you on the spot here since Mary was supposed to.
Yeah, a little, but I'll try my best.
Okay.
With regards to that particular recommendation, we feel that in order for the education policy to work, they really need to look at things like how to reduce poverty reduction. And education is linked to people's obviously social standing. The more educated you are, the better off you are, the more likely you're going to have a well-defined job. So we don't see poverty reduction working by itself, but having the fact that you should have a good education system to support people who are of lower incomes. Workforce development, we also see that any kind of education policy should have some kind of link to workforce development. Obviously, we want a society whereby we have jobs for people when they get out of school, and having a linkage with an education system that supports what currently is needed in the system through workforce areas would be one part of it, I guess. And youth retention and attraction. Obviously, you know, when you're dealing with education policy, you need to look at what it is that will attract youth and keep them in this province. And I think it's only by providing an educational system that's affordable and accessible to them that will allow them to stay in this province, to actually get an education and become productive members of society. I'm not sure if I did as good a job as Mary, but I'm winging it off the cuff here.
That's pretty good. That's better than what I would have done. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Our next speaker, two speakers, are Angela Crockwell and Ellie Jones of Thrive, the Community Youth Network.
No, Ange, just Ellie.
Okay.
Sorry.
You get to meet your counterpart down in the Canadian Peninsula.
Just the same CON and
We're all funded by the Office of Public Engagement. We're different in every jurisdiction.
Good to go? Okay. All right. I just want to say thanks for having us. Dave and I did not include on our presentations, but I think we're probably pretty closely aligned in terms of recommendations. So just a little bit about Thrive. We offer a continuum of educational services. We also do street-based outreach as well. But for the purposes of this presentation, we'll talk about kind of all our alternative educational opportunities. We work with young people 15 and up in the St. John's metro area. And youth are referred to the programs, whether it's through other professionals in the community, parents, and often they come to us as self-referrals, so young people have heard about us and show up on our doorstep and say, can I come and do a school program? So we have 3 school programs that work on a continuum of services, from foundational math and literacy skills, with an underlying philosophy of kind of meeting young people where they are and working with them there, to a GED preparation program. And we also are in partnership with Murphy Center to do part-time high school credit as well with young people 16 and up. So we have kind of a continuum that we see of young people coming in. Every year we hear from over 100 young people and their families regarding struggles to find success in the public education system. These young people come from all socioeconomic classes. However, those families and youth living in poverty are disproportionately represented in the group that we hear from. Youth will share stories with us and with our education staff on their challenges to find a place to belong in our schools, and belonging is a key theme for many of them. They highlight the challenges of poverty, mental health, and addictions, and parents speak of the challenge to find the supports that their children need to be successful students. Education is the key to breaking the cycle of poverty. There exists an economic disparity between families of children who struggle in the education system. Families with means are able to access private assessments, tutors, and supports for young people, resources which are far outside the reach of those living in our lower socioeconomic brackets. And we feel it's a responsibility not only of the public education system, but also all members of society to recognize that we do have a 2-tiered education system, and that there is a huge disparity between what people can access in terms of educational supports, and that we have a very large group of young people who are getting significantly left behind by virtue of living in poverty. Youth have identified a broad range of needs that would support them to reach their goals for academic success. Young people identify things like quiet rooms, tutoring, assessments, but above all, adults who understand what it means to grow up within the margins of our communities. One student with social anxiety, so we kind of told students that we were doing this. They were like, really, this is what I want you to tell them. So some of the quotes have been edited, but we did get some information from young people. And she was out of school for a long time. She was suffering from social anxiety and had periods where she could come to school for a bit. She might come for the morning, she might come for 10 minutes, she might come for a day, and then be out of school for a couple of days or a week or sometimes even longer. And when she was talking about what that experience was like for her, and she said, the hardest thing and what would make her feel most uncomfortable was that the adults in the school would say to her, oh, you're here and it's really nice to see you, but you've been gone for a week. And kind of, it was meant to be in a way that was supportive from the adults, but it wasn't translated to her that way because it highlighted the fact that she'd been out of school. And what she said about this is that there's such a lack of misunderstanding on the part of the adults that are supposed to create support and belonging in the schools, and that they just don't have the understandings and the skills that they need to be able to connect with young people living with mental health and addictions issues, because they don't know, they haven't had the training, and they just don't know, and it's inadvertent, but happens. A lot of the youth that we work with have challenged schools and teachers by no doubt. We work with the bullies and the bullied. We work with young people who've had all kinds of experiences. We work with young people who've been sexually exploited, who live in violence, who have poor mental health and addiction issues. These are the same young people, though, that when they see us, they found success in completing their GED and getting high school credit. Many are now college students and employees, and they've demonstrated that really with the proper supports and getting their needs met in a way that they feel is helpful, they can be successful students and successful parts of our communities. The majority of youth coming to Thrive have been out of the public education system since junior high. We have learners who've been out of school since grade 3 who come and see us. Many are reading below the level of functional literacy, and their math skills are often in the primary level. For these youth, the opportunities have been severely limited in terms of further education and employment. For youth under 18, the reality of returning to public high school after leaving junior high is non-existent, and there's no option for closing gaps in foundation literacy or numeracy. Young people tell Thrive on a daily basis how important it is for them to have a learning environment that is flexible and gives them choice in their education, including small class sizes, part-time schedules, and supports that navigate all those non-academic barriers to education have been critical to the success of over 45 students who have completed their GED with us. It's educational opportunities that recognize youth as whole people that's been critical. While the experience of the education system has been frustrating for youth and families that reach out to Thrive, many acknowledge that it is the system and not the people in it that is not working for them. We have heard many stories of caring teachers and guidance counselors who've tried countless times to reclaim their education. And unfortunately for the young people that we work with, the resources needed were too few or not the right fit for them. When we ask youth that we work with about their school experiences, many people tell us things like, I need more help in class, I don't understand why there isn't any special education anymore, and if kids don't pass, they should be kept back. I was pushed ahead and look where it got me. And key to a lot of that is young people talking about further being excluded from their classrooms or sitting in a class where they can no longer understand the content or the material that's being presented to them. Key to the recommendation and a lot of the conversations that we've had with young people, they've all identified this common theme in their search for education, and it's the need to belong and be accepted by those who guide them in their education. Inclusivity means to recognize the unique differences that make us an individual. It is an acceptance of our strengths and our challenges, and in order for any system to be truly inclusive, it must make room for the alternatives that individuals need for success. Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the few jurisdictions in Canada that lacks an alternative school for youth who are not finding success in our mainstream public schools. Youth are asking for an option that includes a choice of educational success for them. Youth envision a future where they are included in public education in a way that's not only meaningful for them, but will be meaningful for their children as well. For many, they see this as a path forward to breaking the cycle of poverty in which they and their families have been living.
Okay, I gotta ask.
Okay.
Alternative school for you, because this is, I'd ask, how do you see that working itself? Would it be, would it be doing similar to the work that you're doing in your organization, or would it be complementary to what you're doing, and more or less, in other words, I see what you're doing as recovery.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming you would be looking upon the alternative schools more as the preventive measure.
Yeah, and part of inclusion within a school system. The concept of, even though it's alternative school, and people talk about this kind of alternative means it can't be inclusive, when in fact alternative is inherently inclusive. Because what we're saying is you have this group of young people who've been completely excluded and have nowhere to go because they do not fit in the public school system for whatever reason, or it doesn't fit for them. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But without this alternative, we have a massive group of young people. I think it's in around 1,200 young people in Northeast Avalon every year that are leaving school. And
how many again, sorry?
1,200? Yeah, which is the equivalent to a whole high school that we lose every year through non-school completion. That number alone is staggering, but when we think about 1,200 young people no longer fit in our public education system, and there is an answer to that, and there is a way. It's not, I think, it's not the magic pill that's going to get everybody educated and everybody part, but without that as one of the options, we actually don't have an inclusive school system.
Have you met any children that have been to an alternative school setting?
Yeah.
I had to. Yeah.
We have a lot of students who come, we have around, maybe 5% or so. There's students who were being educated in other provinces at alternative schools who've made the transition back to Newfoundland and Labrador, who cannot find a school to go to. Partly because the credits and stuff don't translate, but partly because they were in an alternative school for a reason and can't find a comparable solution here. Because in terms of what would be offered as alternatives, say for example district school, there needs to be a diagnosis, there needs to be something like that. It's a part-time schedule, And many students who look for alternative education don't necessarily want a part-time schedule. They want a different environment that's going to work for them.
Do you think, because I've wondered this myself, so, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you think sometimes there's a reluctance to talk about an alternative school because there's a fear that it's kind of like stigmatizing?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a thought
Because we're all about inclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's, again, it's an interpretation of inclusion. If you look at inclusion as being a philosophy that includes many ways of learning, many ways of knowing, and many ways of becoming educated, then alternative schools are inherently part of that.
Yeah.
If you look at the policy of inclusion as everybody in one space, that's something very different. And so there's a philosophy underlying how you interpret inclusion.
And Ellie, so entry into the school, you said that the district school, there's a diagnosis attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be the criteria then if you, because for entry into this, and I would also assume that there would be the option in this alternative school that there might be some children, this is where they have completed their education, but there's also the option that they would get back into the regular school system itself, right?
Yeah. And in terms of coming to an alternative school from mainstream would be where all of those supports have failed. And so if young people have been supported through their education process and they have tried itinerants and IRPs and kind of the different supports that a young person needs. But the reality is for a lot of young people, the classrooms just don't work because that's not what their needs are.
Here's what I'm getting at too. So I've got a student in front of me who I haven't seen and is no longer attending. Would this be a case of this is a student who might need the alternative school to reach out? Okay, good enough. And then the assessment or the discussion would begin there, fair enough.
Ellie, do you function primarily with volunteers or?
No, we have staff. We have 3 teachers on staff currently, and our funding is a beautiful patchwork of private, government, fundraised kind of money. So we
So sustainability is a never-ending question for you.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, we're getting near the end there now, is Sandy Wilfrey-Fahy with the Newtown Elementary Council.
Good evening, panel guests, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As you mentioned, I am representing Newtown Elementary School Council from Mount Pearl. I want to begin tonight acknowledging our amazing educators, who despite facing significant challenges in today's classroom, are dedicated to our students. They face each day with commitment and determination to make a difference in the lives of each of our children. But increasingly, our educators who have the task of inspiring and shaping the next generation are facing fewer resources, less support, more stress, and an expanding burden of caring for our kids. There's not any one thing that is breaking the system. It's a lot of individual pressures that are compounding and putting an unbearable strain on the people we entrust every day with our most precious but vulnerable people, our kids. If we are to point the blame in one direction, many of these challenges can be traced back to the need for more human resources to meet emerging needs and reinstitute resources that have been cut. Our schools do not have adequate resourcing to meet the demands for student assistance, the needs of inclusive classrooms, the expectations on our classroom teachers, and the challenges of supervision within our schools today. First, I'd like to just talk a little bit to the student assistants who are assigned to the schools. They are not assigned to individual students. Therefore, in a school like ours at Newtown Elementary with approximately 25 students who require the support of student assistants, we are allocated 4 or 5 student assistants at 5 to 5.5 hours a day. The school day is typically 6 hours. While each of the assistants is taking a break or at lunch, which we acknowledge is needed to recharge and is stipulated in the collective agreement, the students have fewer people available to assist them. In a school like ours, we lose approximately 4 hours of the 25-hour allocation to breaks. Using this example, it's evident allocation of hours looks one way on the surface, but in reality results in less time for our students and their needs. Students with autism spectrum disorder flourish best when routines and order are maintained. However, because of the formula used to allocate resources, if a student assistant is working a 5-hour position at our school and a position becomes available in another school for 5.5 hours, the student assistant is entitled to, and most often does, apply for it. While this is certainly advantageous to the student assistant, it then creates change for the students who work with that person, and they now must readjust to another assistant. While we do not fault the student assistant who avails of this process and should be provided every opportunity to do so, we believe the model for applications does little to satisfy the needs of the students. Classrooms are intended to be heterogeneously grouped. Schools today do not stream students by ability. Therefore, students with needs requiring the support of student assistants are not grouped in one classroom. As a result, the student assistants work in various classrooms throughout the day, and this further limits the time actually spent with each student. If we use our example again of 25 students across our 21 classes and 5 student assistants, it is conceivable that each student would only get about an hour of support each day. While putting all students who require support in one class could arguably be a solution for maximizing the help provided from student assistants, we feel strongly, and I'm sure most people agree here, that this would not be acceptable and would amount to streaming students by ability, a model that hasn't been used in decades. Our recommendation is to provide increased allocations for student assistant support in a more effective manner so that students will be provided adequate one-on-one time as required. Next, I'd like to review a little bit on inclusive classrooms, which is a wonderful concept when effectively resourced. Helping students who have exceptionalities feel included with their peers is desirable and attainable. This also allows the other students in the class to better appreciate differences and abilities. However, inclusion cannot be properly achieved without considerable levels of both human and physical resources. Currently, schools do not have sufficient resources to successfully implement the intent of this model. Additionally, students with mental health issues and brain disorders sometimes are challenged to comply with classroom routines. For a student with ADHD, if routines or activities require quiet concentration, it sometimes causes these students to act out and disrupt the routines of the whole class, while that particular child may not be intentionally disruptive and may not have the impulse control to stop or prevent it. Everyone is negatively impacted. The child with ADHD is put in the spotlight, sometimes causing him or her further anxiety, fear, or shame. Likewise, the children who witness the outbursts of disruptive behavior such as inappropriate language, aggression, or sometimes even violence become fearful, anxious, distracted, and unable to focus on their work. While IRT teachers and student assistants are assigned to schools to assist those students with exceptionalities, the reality is that the needs are far greater than the allocations provided. Similarly, guidance counselors are becoming increasingly engaged with students who find it difficult to cope with school routines. Statistics show 1 in 5 students is experiencing mental health challenges. A guidance counselor often spends in excess of 20% of each day dealing with children with these needs. It stands to reason that he or she is also spending considerable time working with the families of those children in order to better provide the necessary support. Factoring the time needed to test, assess, and diagnose exceptionalities, and it is clear that there is limited time remaining to provide proactive programming. It is important to note that not all schools even have full-time counselors to assist with maintaining positive behavioral supports and guidance programs. This proactive work to support compliance with Safe and Caring Schools initiative is too important to be done haphazardly. Classroom teachers are not experts in mental health challenges and are ill-equipped to provide the appropriate guidance, support, and programming students require. While they have considerable knowledge of instructional strategies, they are often less confident dealing with students who tip over desks, display physical and verbal aggression toward others, or threaten to harm themselves or others. These situations are becoming increasingly common in our classrooms, even at the elementary school level, and teachers feel unprepared and uneducated to provide health supports within the school setting. Furthermore, while it's not the area of expertise, they are being called on more frequently to react appropriately to these scenarios. This is causing teachers increased stress, and they are left with the uncertainty about what it means to do the right thing. Our recommendation is to provide additional human resources to schools to support the increased number of students with mental health needs and their families with whom teachers work. In addition, provide the professional development required for educators to adjust to the new reality of engaging with a school community with ever-increasing mental health challenges. A little bit on the classroom teaching and the demands on the classroom teachers, who have significant responsibility. They have to differentiate instruction and assessment for all students, so they learn in the best ways possible. That is a time-consuming, precise endeavor. Planning and preparation to teach this way requires ample time. Most primary and elementary teachers only get an average of 6 prep periods in a 7-day cycle. This is not enough time to focus on individuals. This barely provides time to complete clerical job expectations. In larger urban centers such as ours in Mount Pearl, with 150 to 200 or more students per grade level, classroom sizes are often reaching on the upper caps, hard caps, and the student-to-teacher contact ratio is significantly different than in smaller schools. Providing tailored individual instruction and assessment becomes more challenging with larger numbers. In large schools, teachers also have to attend grade level or divisional meetings that are required when there are many streams per grade level. This further cuts into teaching time in larger settings and half the planning and instruction. Our recommendation is to provide additional human resources so teachers in larger centers do not have such large classes, and they can provide individually differentiated instruction and assessment. Lastly, around supervision of students. The reality of today's family means that students do not get picked up at lunch. These lunch breaks require adult supervision that follows to the teachers. Several times per week, teachers get less than half an hour of lunch breaks that should be rest periods and an opportunity for employees to refuel, get reprieve from their work, and this rest is important for health, productivity, and safety. Employees who are rushed and tired and not able to properly eat their lunch are less productive and focused on the work. While students need supervision, the teachers need these breaks too. Our recommendation is to provide additional human resources to supervise children who stay at school for lunch so that teaching personnel can take this much needed break. In conclusion, as a parent, I have a vision for a more holistic approach to education for all our kids. Like many parents, I feel that our math curriculum needs to be assessed. I believe that multi-year planning needs to be proactive and strategic and not done only when we're backed into the corner with limited options. We need schools that educate the physical and artistic self of the student with as much attention as the academic. For example, since becoming a grade 4 to 6 school last September, we have students in band class on the stage of the gym while gym classes are happening. Because when we accommodated our larger student body, we were short classroom space and we're still awaiting our promised modular. Neither class is effectively getting from the teaching what they should, and it's another stress on our teachers. We're not giving them or the curriculum they provide our students the respect it deserves. But ultimately, none of that takes priority to a system that's broken and not providing the resources necessary for our students to succeed and our teachers to thrive. We must turn our attention to the best practices, identify solutions, and create real, achievable plans for change so that the schools in Newfoundland and Labrador are world class. This is something our future, the children of this province, deserve.
Comments?
No, good. Thank you. Be reassured that because I don't ask a question doesn't mean I don't agree with almost everything you say.
That's right.
So has Newtown is one of the schools that have been realigned, right?
Yes.
So have there been, especially from your last time, that the music is taking place on the stage while
there is band happening on the stage while there's gym classes happening, and both are supposed to be effectively carrying out the curriculum of those classes. The students on the stage practicing, they are taking things like drumming and putting them in, they've arranged it so drums are in the music class. Otherwise, there are various other instruments and so forth that are trying to be learned. These are young kids, first time trying these instruments, and while potentially basketball, you know, they could be doing any number of activities during class. And actually, there were examples last year where one of the classes just had to kind of give up and be sent back because it was just not effective. And curriculum is being affected. There is a promise that the modulars to be delivered this fall, but again, no signs that is happening.
So the modulars are for the
modular,
and you know, are they just for the regular classrooms, or are they for the specialists such as the?
Well, this particular module will allow the growth that's planned. Part of that would be use of this band teacher, that when the music room is in use, that the band would be using.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Maggie Cady, and Maggie is a settlement worker in the schools program coordinator for the Association for New Canadians.
Good evening. I'll try and compete. I don't know what's happening over there. It's a pretty good time. First of all, thank you for having us here this evening. Like you mentioned, I'm here from the Association for New Canadians, and I am the Settlement Workers in Schools Program Coordinator. It's a long title. We prefer to go by Swiss. It's easier for the kids and schools and teachers everywhere. So some of you may know, some of you may not know, the Association for New Canadians, we are a community-based, non-for-profit immigrant settlement agency in Newfoundland and Labrador. We provide settlement and resettlement services as well as an array of programming designed to support immigrant inclusion and integration. As part of this holistic approach to programming, the association, as I mentioned, delivers settlement workers in school programs which assist refugee and immigrant students and their families transition into a new culture and school environment. So the Swiss team includes myself, the coordinator, as well as 4 other employees who are responsible for supporting 200 newcomer children and youth in 25 different schools across the city. That does not include international students or temporary foreign workers. I'm only speaking of permanent residents there. In addition, as a part of this, our outreach program, we provide supports to other schools in the province on a need-based basis. So since the inception of our program in 2006, I'm not sure who to look at. I'm like, okay. So since the inception of our program, we've seen hundreds of families come through our doors, and we provide these families with information on schools, guidance, and we bridge them to services that support young newcomers as they transition into the school system. We've seen a lot of success with the current model that we use as we've been welcomed into many schools across the province. So I'm happy tonight, I know you guys are probably winding down, we're happy to offer, I have 3 recommendations, and then I'm going to present you with our overall vision for what we would like public education to look like in the province. So our first recommendation is to implement diversity training as part of the professional development program. Now I know some of this is being done. We deliver diversity training. I think the university offers some aspects of this. There are community resources available of this. But one key challenge that we're consistently seeing is that refugee and immigrant students, the challenges they face reflect the lack of knowledge regarding appropriate North American school norms, especially as they relate to issues of attendance and punctuality. Indeed, having spent many of their years or entire lives in a refugee camp, these individuals may be unaccustomed to a North American school environment. These issues may be further complicated by the fact that classroom teachers may be unfamiliar with these students' particular cultural norms relating to schooling or education. So with the support from our program, participating schools are better positioned to support these high-need multivariate youth. There's no doubt, obviously, it's pretty obvious, that cultural adjustment takes time, patience, and understanding. The Swiss program is specifically designed to act as a support mechanism and information resource for those educators teaching newcomer youth. So basically, we're here. Schools, please use us. We have the capacity to support the newcomers in your schools as long as we are connected to you. So, as I mentioned, in collaboration with our team, the Diversity Training Initiative has developed tailored workshops to help inform administrators and teachers on the challenges newcomers face while providing valuable cross-cultural awareness training to increase their knowledge regarding refugees' youth lived experience. This latter point is especially relevant given that some refugees face refugee youth face additional mental, physical, and social barriers to learning than their Canadian peers do. So both the Swiss program and the diversity training, we do draw upon a number of resources. We have our own resources, but there are also resources available from the Department of Education online that discuss tips to offer tips to teaching diverse learners in the classrooms. Again, we can connect you with these resources. A couple of things I'm kind of referring to here is that often information is sent home to parents in a letter form. A lot of refugee parents will not be able to read these letters. So this is an opportunity for schools to connect with the Swiss program in order to ensure the communication is interpreted, shared with the family, and the school can, the family can participate in school events and stuff like that. It's also simple things, you know, lunch, meal schedules, and eating experiences vary greatly throughout the world. So if teachers are cognizant of that, that's very helpful. We've had a student this year who was sitting next to his friend, he'd never seen pizza before, and in his culture, you share food with everyone in your community. So he kept poking his friend's pizza. Of course, little Billy didn't want Bobby to be poking his pizza, so that was something that we helped the school navigate through. Second recommendation, and again, resources have definitely been talked here a lot, are additional resources to the English as Second Language programming and Learn programs. So these programs are targeted programming for refugee and immigrant youth, and they're critically important in helping to support the academic needs of newcomers, and in particular the refugee youth. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about the ESL programming and the resources and what we're seeing happening there. So first of all, the ESL teachers who work with the English School District, they're amazing. They really support the children. They equip the students with the valuable language skills needed to succeed in Canada. In addition, through their knowledge, patience, and understanding, these teachers not only help these youths to effectively navigate the often overwhelming Canadian school system, but also help to ease the transition into a new school setting. So we work collaboratively a lot with a lot of these ESL teachers, but despite their outstanding assistance provided by these teachers, there remains a demonstrated need for additional ESL staffing units in classrooms. For example, current programming offered to ESL students at the elementary and junior high school levels is sometimes only offered once or twice a cycle. I've seen students, at least 30 ESL students in the school with one teacher there once a cycle. That's very challenging when you're trying to learn language and catch up to your Canadian peers. Furthermore, at the high school level, ESL instruction is only delivered at Holy Heart of Mary High School. As a result, this causes undue transportation and financial stress for some newcomers who live outside of the Holy Heart catchment area. Indeed, transportation remains a major financial obstacle for low-income refugees. So some things we're suggesting here is obviously to add additional teaching units at the elementary or junior high school levels, but perhaps revising the program, particularly at the high school level, so that it is similar to the itinerant program at the elementary school level, or to accommodate the transportation needs of the newcomer students who live outside the Holy Heart catchment area. ESL is not the same thing as French immersion. It's not a choice if you can't speak the language in your classroom. The Learn program faces similar issues with transportation. The Learn program is literacy, enrichment, academic readiness for newcomer learners, and as it states, it addresses literacy and numeracy for children who have little or no prior schooling. Often refugees arrive with large gaps in education due to prolonged absences of schooling owing to war, conflict, and trauma. So Learn teachers help to create a welcoming and safe environment and have extensive experience working with traumatized youth. While this program is currently only offered at Brother Rice and Holy Heart of Mary High School, curriculum resources are available online through the department for other schools to implement. Again, that's an issue of resources. So as I mentioned, the same issue applies to these students. So if you have gaps in your learning and you arrive as a refugee student in St. John's, you can only go to Brother Rice or Holy Heart of Mary High School. So as an example, I know a 12-year-old student who takes 2 Metro buses in the morning to get to school. He's paying for the Metro buses out of his own money, and I wouldn't like a 12-year-old headed to school in the dark in the mornings. We know what winter is like in Newfoundland. It's a bit challenging. A third recommendation, and gone on a different way, is to implement an increased focus on skilled trades training in the classroom. So this would apply to, obviously, other students outside of the newcomer demographic. But what we've seen is many newcomers, particularly those aged 16 to 21, may arrive with experience in a skilled trade having spent many years as an informal apprentice or laborer or what have you. So tailoring courses to focus on the skilled trades would be highly beneficial as it would help to recognize their prior formal learning. This potentially could place them on a pathway to a rewarding career while promoting interest in the skilled trades in general. In order to help address these issues, schools could partner with local colleges and deliver these courses, or allow youth to use their required volunteer hours to intern a particular trade. And I have seen teachers kind of use the career development program creatively by getting students to help, if they're science-minded, they help with their science class and things like that. But I think more could be done there. So finally, our overall vision is for a provincial education system where newcomers have the opportunity to excel. The school community has a vested interest in promoting and developing an inclusive school environment for all students, and schools have the necessary tools and resources to quickly and effectively respond to the needs of immigrant children and youth. Thank you.
Just one question. You have immigrants and we have refugees. And do you see distinction between, say, the needs of refugees versus the needs of immigrants?
It depends on the family. I've seen immigrants who have had gaps in learning, just based on educational standards in different countries. Sometimes refugees are more in need financially. Sometimes they're not. It really is. It's a very individualistic experience if you're a refugee or immigrant. I do find refugees, based on experiences with trauma, are far more vulnerable in the school system than an immigrant family who arrives for economic reasons, maybe.
I'm not sure if you already said this, but does your group have a liaison person at the Department of Education around this?
We do, and I will say the department is trying to move on this. Not so much the department at the district level. They're trying to move on this. They're not sure how to approach it either, I think is the way. They're aware of the issues. There is some movement. Where they'll go, it's up to them. We're just here to kind of put the issue up. They have been very, we do meet with them. I meet with some representatives from the district, not the department, but from the district.
From the district.
Yeah.
My former life, I was teaching at Holy Heart. Just out of curiosity, and it's interesting that you have, now we had a teacher there who would work in that capacity, actually too, when I look at it. I'm looking at the sports in terms of what you're saying when it comes to dealing with communications from the school to the parents. So I understand you to say that there's even an opportunity there that you can help with that communication process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Would you say that when it comes to the new arrivals, the refugees and/or immigrants, that would it be the students who have an easier time adapting than the parents?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Often we find what happens with the students is that they develop language skills quicker, so they take on this head of household role, which becomes very challenging for the parents. And the parents sometimes, culturally, they're still in their home country, whereas the students are very much part of the Canadian fabric.
Yeah, they seem to adopt the Canadian habits.
They do, quickly.
What about other parts of the province? I know, in my experience, is here mostly like at Hart, and I'm aware of otherwise, and some other schools like St. Andrews. But there are also programs for new ESL programs and other, I think in Corner Brook as well.
There are in Corner Brook. There's an ESL program. Yeah.
So when it comes to the support, are the same issues? Because I would say in St. John's there seems to be, I think a lot more of the families are staying in St. John's now than when I first started teaching at Holy Heart. Are you seeing similar issues in other parts of the province?
We are. Typically refugees, when they arrive to St. John's, they do go through our organization. Right. So the province will notify us, the federal government will notify us. So refugees tend to stay in St. John's. Okay. Other immigrants in the province maybe, there are a lot of group foreign workers outside of St. John's who do require ESL services. But economic immigrants definitely arriving throughout the province.
Very much.
Thank you.
Our last speaker is Marilyn Reed with Democracy Alert. Marilyn, did you want something posted as well? We had it as a Word document that you had. Did you want that subjected, or are you?
No, I'm hoping that the technology won't let me down.
Okay.
And I'll just be able to play this. I was expecting I could easily.
We'll get home early.
I would have been more organized had I.
You want to, while you're waiting, you want to start with those of you.
Okay. I'm with a group called Democracy Alert, and our concern is primarily diminishing participation in democracy, diminishing interest in democracy, and in community activism. So I'd like to start with the political. Well, actually, I'm going to have to put my password in. But if you look at the way voting has evolved over the last 5 decades, in the 1980s, participation rate in voting nationally was around 75%. If you look at our election last week, in spite of an enormous effort by a lot of groups, including our own, to try and get people out to vote, particularly young people, 4 in 10 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians still chose not to vote. Now, we don't know how many young people voted. I think a lot more, but I will tell you that in the 2011 election, only 29% of our young people in our province voted. And so this is really serious, right? And this is why we're here today. I have to. So, public disengagement, not just from voting, but from other forms of democratic participation or community participation, really shouldn't surprise teachers, because they're also experiencing it in the high schools. And absenteeism, for example, from all-day focus activities, should you dare to have one, or from assemblies and from assembly days, and even now from homeroom periods, is something that is just growing. And administrators and teachers might, I think, be tempted to say, well, we'll get rid of homerooms, or we will minimize assemblies, or we certainly won't have focus days, and we'll put most of our activities into our energies into classroom activities. And we would suggest that could be short-sighted. And not only is implicitly giving into this kind of student disengagement maybe not a good idea, but in the end, we suspect that could lead to more absenteeism from the classroom. And that's really not something that's in anybody's interest. On the other hand, we recognize that any attempt to strengthen school culture, and by school culture I mean what goes on outside the classroom, will increase the responsibility of teachers who have to step up to take on this role. And so we would like to suggest, we're actually not asking for anything here, we're going to try and give you something. We would like to suggest that a collaborative approach across schools would effectively and efficiently reduce the load and perhaps even be a positive experience. So, could a start not be made with school announcements? And we've chosen school announcements because they are uniquely positioned as the one part of the school day in the high school where there's an opportunity to talk to all students at once. And that's a really important connection. So here's the challenge. How do you make announcements a part of the school day that students
don't want to miss, but they don't want to skip homeroom or whatever. We'd like to suggest two things. First, announcements should be delivered by students, not by the administrators, and not just the student council president. We would suggest that every group in the school, whether it's a team, whether it's a club, whether it's student council, would be assigned an interval of, say, a week, over which time they would broadcast the announcements. And that would be followed by a 15 to 20-second commercial. During that commercial, the student representative would get to promote the activities of their group. Secondly, we propose that a question of the day be sandwiched in between the announcement and the commercial. And the question of the day would require a minimum of, let's say, 2.5 minutes to deliver, although it could be a lot shorter. So I'm going to play you an example, if I can get this, of an example of a question that would just last over a minute. I chose a shorter one because of the time constraints that we have here. So here we go. I hope this works.
Good morning, everybody. There are only 2 announcements today. Mr. George's phys ed classes will be going outside today, so if that's you, dress appropriately. And the library will be closed after school today because of the staff meeting. And here's the question of the day. What is the high school dropout rate in Canada? A, 1 in 6, B, 1 in 9, or C, 1 in 12? Here's the question again. What is the high school dropout rate in Canada? If you think the answer is A, 1 in 6, put up your hand now. If you think the high school dropout rate in Canada is B, 1 in 9, put up your hand. If you think the answer is C, 1 in 12, put up your hand now. Okay, drum roll please. If you said 1 in 6, you would have been right back in 1990, but not today. The answer is now 1 in 12. The dropout rate has been falling steadily since the 1990s. As for Newfoundland and Labrador, back in 1990 we had the highest dropout rate among the 10 provinces. Today we have the 2nd lowest after British Columbia. The highest high school dropout rate in the country is actually in Quebec, followed closely by the Prairie provinces. These stats really do raise some interesting questions, don't they?
So that gives you an idea of the questions. We also have something called an opinion poll, which you might want to give once a month or whatever, and I'm going to play you an example just of that part of the announcement. Sorry, you just...
Today's announcements were brought to you by the Chess Club.
Oops, that was the commercial.
Still actually play chess and with each other face to face across the table. If you'd like to learn how to play a mind game that's been around since ancient times, or you are looking for someone to play chess with, check us out on Tuesday after school in room 204. We will be going over E5 variations of the Sicilian defense this week.
There's no question of the day today.
Here's the opinion poll.
We now have the results to give you from the opinion poll you participated in last week. The question was, what do you think is the best way to get more women elected as MHAs or MPs, considering there are way more men than women in government? 172 of you thought that passing a new law that would require a certain percentage of seats to be filled by women in the House of Commons is the solution. 83 people said there is no need to do anything. The most popular answer at 199 votes was that political parties should have to have more women running as candidates. Each of the approaches comes with challenges. For example, for those of you who said passing a law insisting that every government needs to have a minimum number of women, what are you going to do if too many men get elected? Are you going to fire some? Would you appoint extra women? But then they're not elected. How would you choose people fairly? For those of you who said there's no need to do anything, is it because you think it's okay that there's always less women than men in politics? And finally, for those of you who think that political parties should have to run more women, how do you make them do it? How do we decide how many women run and which ridings they run? Clearly, there is no easy answer to all this, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't ask these questions.
So where do you find the questions of the day? That would be an obvious question. And our group, Democracy Alert, has already prepared 80 questions of the day. However, more would be needed if this kind of concept would take off or could be sustained at the high school level. So this is where we would invite schools to use part of a professional development day, and it would be organized around the following plan. At the beginning of the professional development day, teachers would be briefed on the aims of civic engagement in this case. Why do we want to do this? Why do we want to bother? And then discuss what kind of questions they would like to see included. And themes could be across the board, societal issues. So democracy, politics, the environment, gender issues, minority groups, trade and globalization, food, education, you name it, it's there. Okay? After a discussion of what kind of questions they'd want to see, teachers would break out into groups and create their own questions of the day. And on reassembly, teachers will collectively share their different questions. So these new questions would then be added to the existing question bank and then sent out to a central location. This is a half-day exercise, which means that a PD day would be, the afternoon session would be available for something else. So let's look at the advantages. Teachers will have been engaged in a cooperative, creative, and productive process that leads to a usable product. But they will have no responsibilities outside the PD experience. Their contribution will simply be forwarded and then incorporated into a booklet or an online site where all schools could access it. So why did we decide on this? We are interested in curriculum as well, but that's something we're dealing with the Department of Education. Why specifically school culture with the NLTA? If you consider the difference between curriculum initiatives and school culture initiative can be instigated quickly and got rid of quickly if you don't like them, unlike curriculum. They also reach out to students on an emotional plane and remind them of the possibilities for real-life connections. And in an age where more and more of our students are spending so much of their time online, we think this emphasis on real-life experiences promoted through school culture would help to maintain balance. So what's your final message? First, don't give up on school culture, and that's what we say to the schools. And don't underestimate its significance. Finland outperforms most other OECD countries on international tests of skills precisely because they place culture and society at the heart of the school experience. Secondly, teachers need the time and space to talk about school culture and how they could enrich it. And to that end, we would say that professional development days need to be reclaimed from their current bureaucratic bias. Yes. Third, someone has to show a leadership role, and that's the NLTA, Jim. So we would like the NLTA to take on a much more proactive interest in collaboration with school boards and individual schools on the development of PD days, especially at the high school level. So in conclusion, what we've tried to do is reach out by making suggestions that are as practical as possible and don't cost anything, because we're aware of the limitations. In recognition of all the expectations and demands that are placed on teachers, and you could really feel that tonight. We hope that not only does our plan appeal as practical, but that it finds resonance with you as you consider what kind of citizens your students will be in the 21st century world. Because I think it's becoming really clear when I listen to all the problems that we're having that we need stronger communities. And we need to start thinking about that. Thank you very much.
Marilyn, why not a course, a specific course to deal with this issue? Because I sense, Muse, your concern with regards to the state of democracy, participation in democratic processes, and so on and so forth.
We've had 3 meetings with the Department of Education, and that's one of the things that we proposed. We have proposed that. But I think that there is a real tendency in society to emphasize the individual. you know, and we really need to get back to talking about community. And schools are really just the best place to start. So I would say that there are creative ways that schools can do it if they act collaboratively. I think there's just tremendous pressure on individual teachers. I think there's got to be better ways for teachers to get together, for schools to get together. You know, I was a teacher in Mount Pearl, and in the senior high that I taught at, across the road was another senior high, and we never, in the 20 years I was there, did I ever meet a teacher at that school or talk to that school. And you're nodding your head there. That kind of collaboration could happen, and I think it'd be really motivating for teachers.
Thank you. Just one question. You mentioned Finland as being amongst the highest achieving system, right? Canada is actually the highest achieving English-speaking system in the world, and we're a very pluralistic democracy. The challenges and Newfoundland actually fares quite well in international comparison, despite the public perceptions that are created sometimes. Our democracy is quite strong, but it's sagging, you know? And I think our position has to be, we have to have an honest look at ourselves and say, how do we build on our strength and get better, you know, and have people more engaged. Again, it's not a question really. This panel is probably an exercise in public activism. It's a public panel on public education. And where has this been, you know, that kind of consultation over the last few years? So there's a lot to be said for governance, and there's a lot to be said for open governance, and maybe we're going into a political life where people will feel a sense of empowerment to speak, because we have to get out there and do that. And so I thank you for saying that.
And I think we need to have a return to discussion and debate in the classroom. I would say that in the social studies classroom, a lot of the subject areas which promoted discussion and debate have been removed. And what's been put in place is very discrete skilled economic education courses where there's very little opportunity to do that. So that's one of our discussions.
And a lot of our community building exercises, like homeroom, and we've had some time together. So we're crunching our day. So it's all about and get the hell out when we're finished with you. So it's I think there are lots of things to what you said. Thank you.
Copy of your presentation now? Do you have a copy of your presentation for us?
I do, and I sent one online and too, so that you could listen to the. But I can give you a written.
Yeah, that was on the junk drive. You gave me the. I had one presented to me, but an electronic version. That's not the same one, is it?
Yes, I think so. If one was presented to you by Susan.
Yep,
that was us. Yep.
Okay, we're at the end of our evening in formal presentations, and so two things before we either go our separate ways or ask a few questions. Up to you. Thank you for coming again. I can't express that gratitude enough and appreciation as well. If you haven't put a submission in online, if you haven't made a public presentation and you're choosing not to, the online submission route is still there for you. And we do want to hear from you whether it's your account pointing out the successes, or you're offering a critical analysis. Whatever it is, we're open to that. So we would do, and we even, as you can see, a lot of the people who came, we've looked at when we first started this, of inviting as many people as we could. It was sort of a brainstorming exercise. People, groups that I'm aware of that I've had contact with. I know Ellie had come into Holy Heart many years ago and so it's an organization that that offers some challenges to the regular school system in what was said, but at the same time it's about education as well, and about recovering youth and offering them a chance to participation. So we're open to all things that come our way. So at this point, that's the online submission. And Pete, that was going to be my next comment. You are now, and Steve just must make sure, you are free to go at this point. I was going to say that. But if I had said that first, I would have been said, now don't forget about the online submission, so I can do no right here. The assault to my ego is amazing. Anyway, so you are free to go at this point in time. We understand you have commitments. It's 9 o'clock. We certainly appreciate the fact that you've taken this time to be here. But if you want to stay and have either an informal discussion or pass some commentary on what you've heard or thoughts, you're free to do so now as well.
I just have 2 quick comments. What Ellie is your name? I think I saw a lot of heads nod, and an aha moment of what she said around the inclusive conversation and create what we're trying to do sometimes in creating an inclusive classroom is actually excluding a lot of students. And I think that's it's an approach and a philosophy I think that I'll take away from this and bring back to our school council. And I think a lot of times it's where it's peg round hole kind of situation where you're really trying to make it fit and it's struggling. I think the other thing that I was nodding along with the last presentation on the democracy piece, I think a lot of times I'm finding as our schools have become larger, our primary, I also sit on the St. Peter's Primary School Council, we had a student body of over 700 K-3 kids in that school, and had one opening for a parent representative to sit on our school council. We didn't require an election because we have one parent put their name forward. And I think a lot of times it's easy for parents to hide in these large schools, and you think you'd have such a resource of parents in a school of 700 kids, and trying to rally people and to get people involved in building that community feeling is sometimes quite challenging. And people not sort of stepping up into that in that democratic process of an election and school council and so forth. So I think those are just sort of 2 comments of those from those presentations.
Any other comments? Go. Yeah.
Yes, I noticed there was a little bit of interest around the alternative education. I sat on a committee for about an 8-year period looking at alternative education. I'd say that the last time I was at a meeting was about 4 years ago. Learning Disabilities Association was in that group. Angela Crockwell with not Thrive at the time, but another group. Many community groups, many papers and submissions given to the Department of Education. A representative from the NTA sat on the committee, person from the Faculty of Education. As a parent with a child with a mental health issue in the regular school system, I felt, and as an educator who didn't like to say that the education system wasn't really where my son fit the best, I really struggled with that. On the alternative education system would have suited him far, far better. And I think we have to revisit that notion again. And the mental health unit, the behavioral unit, and the Murphy Center do wonderful jobs, but there's still something in between that is needed.
Can I ask you a question? And I've got a number of people here now, like Dave, Ellie, with regards to the alternative. I've heard that from other people. I see members of the FEED-NL here as well. What is there a resistance, or is there a challenge to doing that, or is there a willingness to approach it? And what do you see as the challenges or the obstacles, or however you want to look at it?
Well, I believe what you're referencing is the Coalition for Educational Opportunity, which was headed by our organization, which has changed our name. And the coalition, it was just prior to Joe Burke, I believe, becoming Minister of Education. So the coalition put forward a proposal for an alternative school. It was accepted by the Department of Education. Politically, something went sideways, and that proposal was then squashed, I guess, for lack of a better, that's what happened, for lack of a better term. And the traction on the alternative school has never been the same. In meeting with the Department of Education, it is clear that it is around the interpretation of the policy of inclusion, and that we have been told by the department that an alternative school does not fit with their policy of inclusion, and that if we were to have a school for all of the children that did not fit into the public school system, then who's to say we wouldn't need a red-haired kid's school and a blonde-haired kid's school? And
I think
So
you're getting.
I get very.
I think you're getting back to where the school for the deaf was a separate school. They're not going to be going back to that kind of model. Although they did have an alternative school in Stephenville for quite a number of years that was a very successful program. And the committee that I was involved in, we brought in people from BC, looked at their programs there in other parts of Canada, which have very vibrant and successful alternative programs. And I think the reality of today, with anxiety issue, mental health issues, we know we have the inclusion as well, but we know that we need to look at things differently.
I think it's the way inclusion is being interpreted, and I love the way you phrased it, because inclusion shouldn't have to mean that everybody needs to be taught in the same classroom. I know years ago there was research done that students with learning disabilities often thrived and performed much better in a school that was designed for their learning disabilities.
And young people,
we don't have choices here.
Yeah, young people don't, not that they don't care about stigma, I know, but that's what the grown-ups are worrying about. People want an education, and they want the opportunity to learn, and they want the opportunity to be successful and have a future. And when we say as grown-ups, we're not doing that because we don't want to stigmatize you. They don't care. They want to go to school.
And you get back to the need for an occupational therapist in school. An occupational therapist could, in fact, identify many of the environmental factors, the lights that have a tick in it or what have you, that throw these kids who have autism, mental health issues, depression or anxiety issues, that throw them right off. It's very important.
Ironically, an OT that we heard from had said that when she came, she's moved away, but she was encouraged by the fact that the inclusive education is not as rigidly interpreted as it is in some other jurisdictions. I asked for the clarification. She said, well, in another jurisdiction, in the jurisdiction she came from, it is inclusive all the time in all circumstances. But what I'm hearing here is you're sort of suggesting the opposite. There seems to be that very interpretation of it here as well. Is that, here's a question, is that because the message has been lost, the lack of understanding of what, I'm just trying to see where that comes from, because I am hearing
I think the message has been lost, because for years I was a school trustee. At that point, we always talked about a continuum of inclusion. Everybody was included, but there was a continuum. When I say continuum, I mean whether it had to be all in the same room or in various different environments.
I think
that worked well, and now it's gone to the point that it all has to be in one classroom. So what's happening is children who have certain needs, they're actually not being included by having to sit in that classroom because their needs are not being met. So it's having a reverse effect on some populations.
I'm just wondering if the elephant on the table here is economics. And listening to all the needs that in the school system, the mental health needs, all the different needs, and so my question to you is: can we respond to all of these needs in a way without increasing funding to education? Because I'm suspicious. I don't know whether that's going to happen. I'd love it to happen. But so my question is, are there ways that we can respond to all these needs somehow by thinking differently that's not going to exponentially increase our system?
Are you asking the question?
Yeah, I'm asking a question of anybody.
I think there's a huge upstream cost.
I can answer that. I don't know if it's a great answer, but I don't think we could do it without increasing the funding. But I think, the quote I always use, a bit tongue-in-cheek, is we're going to pay for this at some point.
Yeah.
When would we like to pay for it? Would we like to invest in quality education that meets the needs of all of our students now, or are we going to invest in treatment programs, the judicial system, all these sorts of things at a later date? For me, it's a much better investment, and I think everyone probably here would agree, to do it at an early age. Early intervention, quality programming, specific programming for all these things. So it may increase our education budget, but I think the long-term results of that would be a reduction in other areas of government services. And I think properly done over a long time, we would end up saving money. Because I think it's much more expensive to incarcerate somebody who perhaps didn't receive the services they needed in school, ended up in trouble, than it is to provide those early interventions. So I guess to directly answer your question, that there will need to be more money into the education system, but my answer to that would be it's a better investment of those tax dollars.
I just wanted to continue on what Lynn has said, because I also agree. I do think it's a problem with the interpretation of inclusion. But I will tell you that our group, the Federation of School Council, have sat around the table with government officials and the Department of Education many times, and particularly on the secured treatment for youth with mental health and addictions. And we've been in numerous meetings where we've been told, oh yes, it's going to be passed in the House in the fall, we'll give you this specific date. And then what happens is an outside agency sometimes comes in and says, oh no, you can't do that because you are infringing on someone's rights. So I do agree that there is an interpretation, there's an issue around that. But there's also an issue of fear. And nobody, there's always this fear of, if we agree with this and if we support this, then the blame is going to come back on us, right? And it's really too bad because so many of these things are happening in other provinces. And for some reason here in Newfoundland, it just seems like the buck stops with whoever's in government at the time and at other pressures, outside agencies. And I mean, we've been waiting for that with secure treatment, and it's in other provinces. And as I said, we've been told repeatedly that, it's going to be in place, that something happens. And
I'm a teacher in the trenches, actually. And when I walked in this room, I was quite surprised. I thought there would be hundreds of people here tonight. First of all, I just want to say thank you.
We turned them away.
In some ways, that's part of my point. I do want to thank you for doing this because as a teacher in the school system right now, I feel that we feel less engaged than ever in the sense that there is very little place where our voice can go. We are experiencing a lot of the issues that all of you are speaking about. I personally teach in the primary elementary system, and I see the ESL challenges and the inclusion challenges and children who needs are not being met. And we are all very frustrated by that because as teachers we want to meet those needs. Economics is a big part of that. But also, when things are happening and initiatives come in, we are not being asked, do they work? We are not being asked, we would like to do this, but with the realities of your programming, can they happen? And so a lot of teachers I've spoken to are very happy that you are doing this, and I'm hoping people are sending. Are people sending it through email and through the online program? There are thoughts and feelings, because I think we're actually afraid to speak in forums like this. You, Jim, would know quite a lot about that, and perhaps I shouldn't even be saying that, but we are afraid to speak because we've been, as you know. So I'm just hoping that there are a lot of teachers who are behind the scenes giving you the feedback because you are our voice, and we are really thankful that you are doing this for us, because for us is for the children. And there's nothing more frustrating than being in a classroom with children who are looking to you and knowing that you don't have the tools that you need to meet their needs.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yep.
Can I speak to that as well, from being a teacher who started teaching in 1978 and taught for about 10 years, which was a very strong time for the NTA, and a very strong time for teachers speaking up and feeling that they could have a voice. And I went back substituting in 2004, and I no longer felt that. I no longer felt that teachers could speak up and have a voice. And I think that's very sad. And I think that's partly why I got involved in the Democracy Alert Group. Because I do think that we do need to have discussions and debates, and our children in the schools need to learn how to do that as well.
I've been amazed by that sentiment, and it hits in a lot of places that teachers are reluctant to come out and speak. And I left Newfoundland in 2002 and went up along 4 different universities. And I used to talk a lot about how teachers in Newfoundland were not afraid to challenge government, would speak open publicly. And that changed in the 10 years that I was gone. I come back and see it now. It's very similar in New Brunswick. They had the one district, and they couldn't criticize the district without criticizing the government. So the idea that even if you criticize public policy, which you're free to do, somehow that's criticism of your employer, which is a distinction. And so I really think, and I'll give the NLTA full credit, which you're a member, of course, not a lifetime member, full credit for this exercise. And if one of the outcomes has to be, how do we get people out speaking in a fearless way? It's because if you're right, you're right. You shouldn't get chastised for that.
And it's on the big things that are happening, but it's also on like just the daily things that are happening. For example, we have a new kindergarten report card from K to 6 that was piloted in a few schools last year. They made some changes, and we have yet to find a teacher who found it to be an effective report card. It is difficult for parents to interpret and understand. We actually find ourselves trying to figure it out ourselves so we can actually give a value to things. And I'll give you an example. From K to 6, the report card is identical. There is no consideration for the fact that I teach kindergarten. Uh-oh, more information. But that my children should not have the same report card as someone else. So in an example, art, they're asking us to say the student is able to demonstrate an understanding of how art influences society. This is a kindergarten report card. But there are multiple examples of that. Nowhere does it say your child is demonstrating independence and is learning to transition or is gaining confidence, can even use a pair of scissors and wants to explore art and its many wonderful facets. But no one, and so I'm sitting around staff room, and I'm also sitting around staff meetings where people are going, what does this mean? We don't understand. This report card doesn't make sense. And we're basically being told there's nothing you can do. There is nowhere that you can go and say, this report card right off the bat, we know we're professionals. These report cards aren't working for teachers or parents. And that frustrates us. And the stress I'm feeling right now with these types of report cards around teachers who are just trying to make sense of it is really difficult because in the end, we're on the front line. We're the ones who give numbers. And parents want to understand. And we don't know who to even speak to.
And that's a good online submission as well, right? That's certainly, I've heard.
You have heard that?
Oh, in the last few days, yes.
Just to put that in perspective, we went to a session, the Harris Center gave a session, and it was on democratic participation. And there was a speaker who came in from the States, and the point that he made as an aside was that we had by far the most top-down province in the country. And it was an aha moment for me, you know, because I think that we've seen that in education. As I look at the senior high social studies curriculum, and it is very neoliberal. And I think teachers didn't decide on that. We definitely didn't. Somehow this curriculum got put on teachers from above, and teachers did the curriculum outcomes, right, that all those lists and everything, but the big decisions as to what was taught and what was not to be taught were made elsewhere. And that's the reality that apparently is our province, which might explain some of the, you know, the other frustrations that when we compare it with other provinces.
Great discussion, and I was just saying to Steve here, that is the a lot of the questions and comments that have occurred after that have, you know, have proved to be the most enlightening, especially around even this discussion on alternative education, because I will say this: there is an element of fear about talking about this as if you know that you're opposing something. But I think it's good to have an open discussion, and at least to hear the idea. So there's been a lot of, in all of the sessions we've had, the post-discussion has often been just as enlightening as the presentations themselves. So at this point, we'll draw it to a close, but we're not going anywhere if you want to talk to us individually. I'm not going anywhere anyway. But, we're all up here, we'll mingle, and we'd love to hear from you. Have any further questions, comments? And once again, any ideas that have been jobs, please put them online. You can't write a report on submissions you do not have.
We will hide your names, and we won't say you're a kindergarten teacher from such and such school.
And I want to thank very much here Scott and his technical assistant, aka his daughter. Scott is our IT person at the NLTA, who has even been able to make me look good on a video. So that test of his remarkable and astounding capabilities. Thanks for coming, folks.